I am the acting chair of this meeting today. Chair Perez is ill, as are many people in our fair city. So I'm happy to chair this meeting today. To the commissioners, thank you for being here and welcome. And I just want to remind you that if you speak, if you could please press the button with the person's body on it, and that will mean that you are recorded and that you can be heard. So if you can remember that, and I'd like to welcome everybody else to this meeting today. To our guests, thank you so much for your presence. And we ask, if you have not done so, if you would sign in, please. And if you are a guest here and you're wishing to address the commission with a public comment, if you could sign in and pick up one of the information sheets at the back. So to open our meeting, we want to offer a land acknowledgement. And I believe that's going to be shown on the screen, so you could follow along on the screen as I read aloud. Metro Arts stands and holds space on the unceded and sovereign lands of the Cherokee, Yuchi, and Shawnee peoples who have stewarded it for generations. Every community owes its existence and vitality to generations from around the world who contributed their energy to making the history that led to this moment. Some were brought here against their will. Some were drawn to leave their distant homes in the hope of a better life, and some have lived on this land for more generations than can be counted. We acknowledge we are all standing on ancestral lands, and we honor the thousands of enslaved African peoples whose lives were physically and spiritually stolen. We pay respects to elders, past and present. Metro Arts invites you to join in our commitment in getting to know our Native communities in more meaningful ways in alignment with our restorative arts practice. So thank you. We have a number of new commissioners as of last month, and I know we have some we have more of a full house today, so I thought we would take a minute just to go around, and if commissioners could just introduce themselves very quickly. And I wonder if we could start with Commissioner Watts. Could we go this way? Just introduce yourself. If you could press the button too.
Let's press the button with the person on it. I just read that. I didn't follow those rules. Beverly Watts, I'm retired from state government.
Derek Bell, thank you for having me.
Janet Kurtz.
Tim Jester.
Campbell West.
And I'm Heather Lefkowitz.
And I'm John Neflin.
I'm Arlene Nicholas Phillips. Good afternoon, Dewana Wade.
Carol McCoy.
And Daniel, would you like to introduce the staff who is here quickly?
Sure. Let me introduce you to Attilio, our public art staff, and then can you pass it on, Attilio?
Sure. Chuck, can you introduce you, Chuck?
Grants and Initiatives Manager. Asia Pines, Social Media Specialist. Chris Bote, Finance and Operations Director. Darren Jackson, Communications Manager.
Jesse Ross, Public Arts Coordinator.
Holly Burles, Cultural Planning Manager.
Vivian Fox, Office Support Specialist.
Thank you. So glad you could all be here, and thank you for all your work. We do regularly hold space at commission meetings for public comments. The public comment process is an important opportunity for the public to speak directly to the commission about agenda topics before the commission. We value the public's feedback and their interest and commitment to Metro Arts. All comments are carefully considered and integrated when possible, and if appropriate, into our process forward. Commissioners' public comments received through the online portal were emailed to you and are available in your packet. I didn't see any, so there may not have been, but in general there are.
There were none.
There were
There were
none.
none emailed.
Thank you. Individuals providing public comments must either be residents of Davidson County or work in an arts organization whose work is predominantly, by that I mean 55% or more, in Davidson County. When invited to speak, please state your name and the agenda item you're addressing so we can include it in the minutes for this meeting. And please note that this is a one-way parliamentary process. Commissioners should not engage directly with commenters during the meeting. The guidelines for public comments adopted into the commission bylaws are as follows. Davidson County residents can sign up for public comments. The public comment period is limited to 20 minutes total. Comments are limited to a maximum of 2 minutes per person. Persons wishing to provide comment on matters that are germane to items on the agenda must sign up prior to the beginning of the meeting on the sign-up sheet provided at the meeting. The opportunity to provide public comment is offered on a first-come, first-served basis. At all the meetings, the commissioner chairing the proceedings shall have the authority to limit the number of persons, non-board members allowed to speak on an issue, and to limit such speakers' time. Vivian Fox is the Office Support Specialist at Metro Arts and will be facilitating public comment today. Vivian, will you invite our first participant to speak? Thank you. For clarity, how is the time kept? Is that, Vivian, you do that? Thank you so much.
So I keep the time, and once you hit 1 minute, I'll say 1 minute. So just please be respectful of the time and how many people that we have. It looks like we have 6. So the first person is Simone Boyd. Your time starts now.
Hi, Commissioners. My name is Simone Boyd. I'm from North Nashville. I'm here to talk about old business, the treatment of staff, transparency, and mental health. But first, I want to thank the new commissioners for jumping into the fray. Most importantly, I want to thank Metro Arts staff for enduring the chaos at hand. Second, I would like to tell you a brief story about Metro Arts in the form of a story. Not too long ago, a few highly credentialed people joined Metro Arts with the intention of doing good for the Nashville community. After a few years on the job, these people noticed that a lot of the outward-facing rhetoric regarding Metro Arts, like fairness, diversity, and inclusion, was all theater, and that the practices that were happening inside the agency did not match what the agency was requesting of artists and the artist community. As such, this group of well-intentioned human beings started asking questions and making noise. And as a result of this quest to keep Metro Arts accountable for its stated values of equity and fairness, these humans were pushed out of Metro Arts by legal shenanigans, intimidation, workplace toxicity, and inaction from the Metro Arts Commission. 2 of those beautiful humans are here with us today, Janine Cristiano and Alusha Tribble.
1 minute.
Last week, Wally Dietz sent you a memo noting that several staff members at Metro Arts are raising concerns regarding workplace conditions again. You've seen the hostility and aggression that Director Singh levied at then Chair Angelico. You know that he tried to terminate Vivian Fox, and I personally have had to seek mental health support twice after engaging with Director Singh. So I'm asking that you take the HR investigation seriously and act swiftly to protect the safety and mental health of the staff, because we've been here before. When Janine and Alusha were pushed out for seeking truth and transparency, we as artists in the arts community also paid a high cost because we lost their care, organization, mentorship, stewardship, and diligence. Thankfully, there's a somewhat happy ending. The 4 women that were pushed out are all directors at national organizations. Thank you for taking the time to listen to me.
Thank you. Next person I have is, I want to say it says Cecilia.
That's me. I see my time of Simone.
Thank you, Commissioners. I want to take a moment to thank Galushla for her guidance and care of me as an artist. Wouldn't have the career I have today without her. Now I want to talk to you about the question at hand, whether or not Metro Arts is a good steward of taxpayer money. Currently, Metro Arts is hemorrhaging hundreds of thousands of dollars in no-bid contractors. Director Steen explained at the last executive committee that he made a rookie mistake and that the $2 million was not bonds that was needed in additional funding. He said, I repeated something I heard in passing, and I didn't verify that information. The thing is, we don't pay directors saying $200,000 to make rookie mistakes and repeat hearsay in public meetings without verifying sources. In my mind, $200K is veteran pay, and he should be able to do things like plan an agenda when calling a meeting with the mayor, the director of finance, HR, and legal. We should expect him not to have someone on payroll for $93,000 a year when they haven't worked at Metro Arts in 18 months, which is the case of Van Marabelli. Finally, at the last commission meeting, Director Singh said the audit would likely find that he signed some invoices that he should not have. But that is a mischaracterization based on text messages that I obtained. Director Singh has strategically... Time?
1 minute.
Strategically and intentionally sought to circumvent the procurement process to pay money to outside consultants. This is money that should be going to artists and the artist community. At the executive committee meeting last week, Director Singh expressed concerns about staff capacity. I recommend disbanding the advocacy committee because we don't need advocacy for more money until Metro Arts can assure council and the mayor that the current money is being stewarded properly. So to answer the question at hand about whether or not arts is a good steward of taxpayer resources, the answer is no. No, if we allow the mistreatment of staff to go unchecked. No, if we allow the hemorrhaging of hundreds of thousands of dollars to go to consultants in no bid arrangements. And no, if we cannot expect Director Singh to represent us well to council and the mayor's office. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Simone. The next person I have on the list is Joseph Gutierrez. Time starts now.
Hey everyone, I'm a resident of District 7, and then I'm also coming today as the grants manager at the Dana Margaret Maddox Fund, a local foundation that supports the improvement of the lives of young people and the protections of the natural environment. I'm coming today to just kind of speak on anti-racist and equity commitments. The Dana Margaret Maddox Fund gives about $2 million in funding each year, and we made a commitment to equity back in 2017. At the time, we were really kind of just exploring and learning more about it. And we did that in partnership with Metro Arts. We helped partner to bring in together like the Crossroads anti-racism training a few years back, and partnered with that for a few years. But I think the best measure of grant making is really through the partners we fund and through the dollars that we give out. So back in 2017, I'm sad to say that we only had 10 partner organizations that were Black, Indigenous, or people of color led, and they only represented about 10% of our overall grant making. Just recently, when we looked at our grant making for this past year,
1 minute.
2023, I'm happy to say that we made 80 grants to Black, Indigenous, and people of color led organizations, representing over 75% of our overall grant making. I just want to say, that we didn't get to that point without struggle. We brought in consultants. We had to implement restorative practices internally because we had so many internal disagreements. We had board members leave our organization. And I just want to say, that the road is very difficult, but I think, here at the end of it, and, it's still an ongoing process, but I can look back and say I'm really proud of my work and really thinking about, we're exploring and helping the community in new ways, finding partners that are really reaching the community and are in touch with the people that they serve. So thank you.
Thank you. The next person I have is Alan Fay.
Thank you. I yield my time to Simone.
Hi again, Commissioners. I promise this will be the last time that I speak. Thank you, Mr. Gutierrez, for the comments you made. The road to equity and change will be difficult, but that road will require truth, and we have not had that from Director Singh. In October of last year, he told you all that he wouldn't have anybody in finance, and that he was losing Skylar, but the truth is that Skylar went part-time. At the executive committee last week, he said that he's never been through a budget cycle. They needed to keep Ian on as a contractor because he's never been through a budget cycle, but he's been here since August of 22. So he's been through a budget cycle before. So we won't get to equity with the arts unless we have truth. And we don't have a leader who is willing to tell the truth. So I'm asking you as a commission to make the change. Finally, I want to say that we are tired. As artists and arts organizations, I am tired of having to come here and talk to y'all. I am tired of coming and writing emails and researching and submitting public records requests. I know the staff is tired.
1 minute.
Metro Arts should be a place of joy and safety. Our society is facing facing so many challenges, and we as artists should be meeting those challenges. But we can't because of the distractions that we face every single time we come here. Many of us don't even apply to grants here anymore because it's too hard and it's too painful. So I'm asking y'all to do the right thing. That's all.
All right, next I have Stephanie Pruitt-Gaines. Did you want to make a public comment? I know you're our featured artist today, though. Okay.
So I'll come back before you in a slightly different light in a moment.
Time starts now.
Thank you. But I simply want to share my email address with all of you. There have been so many conversations in the last 6 to 12 months about communication and access and who has access to commissioners and are there super PACs, are there larger organizations, that type of thing. And I just want you to know you have local artist friends here in Nashville who care deeply about the creative community, care deeply about this body, and care deeply about the creative work that we are passionate about and want to do in Nashville. So my email address is emailspruitt, EMAILSPRUITT @gmail.com. emailspruitt@gmail.com. I simply want you to know that there are individual artists who are deeply invested in this work and want to make sure that our voices are heard and seen. And if you ever just want to talk to someone without being judged and without, being frustrated by saying this is complicated, I don't know all the history, I don't know the context, I might not know it all, but if I know someone and I can connect a dot, I would be happy to. And I know there are a lot of people in this room and at home who feel the same way. So I hope you all have access to the information, the ideas, the people that you need access to make solid, well-rounded decisions. And I thank you for your service. And I'm appreciative of everyone who's here who's doing the same. So thank you.
Thank you. The next person I have is Janine Cristiano. Your time starts now.
Hi, everyone. My name is Janine Cristiano. I used to work here at Metro Arts. With me, I've invited Alusha Tribble, a former colleague, current colleague.
Yeah, current colleague.
And former colleague here at Metro Arts to speak. I know we have a limited time, and so I do just want to say I'm here to listen. I've always offered my support, and I continue to offer that here for if I can be helpful at all. The one bit of wisdom that I would hope that you take that I've tried to communicate for the past several years is for this change to happen, for this transformation to happen, individual accountability needs to take place, honesty, as our previous speakers have mentioned, and also, but also addressing the larger systemic issues involving all the other departments, culture, et cetera.
1 minute.
Hi, I'm Cecilia Alusha Tribble. I used to work here at Metro Arts, and I invite all of you to go back through my interview with HR and to listen to that interview. A part of what the director asked me is the racism at Metro Arts individual or is it institutional? Which is a good, and I'll take this as a teaching moment, right? Institutional racism, this is an institution that has the capability of gathering, distributing, or withholding resources. That's the only job of every institution, right? And institutional racism meets individual and socialized racism with how impacts on society, on how resources get time. Do you mind if I take a couple of more minutes?
Commissioner.
Get impacted, distributed out into society. And so I urge all of us to understand the ways in which we need to take individual accountability and then make an institutional decision about how to do things differently. I urge you to rely on the expertise of your community Several of us have reached out multiple times. You have the expertise in order to move the institution forward and to drive equity in a way that we were able to do without institutional support before, right? And so my email address is CECILIAOLUS as in Sam, OLA .tribble, TRIBBLE @gmail.com. Please email me, call me, hit me up on Facebook, Instagram, X, whatever. I'm happy to have conversations so we can figure this out because Metro Arts needs to get right. And there are enough resources in order to do it with community, with organizations, and with the people we have in place. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. And that concludes our public comments.
Thanks very much to all of you for being here and for sharing your comments and for your commitment to the well-being of the Nashville arts community. So now I'm going to move to the first two items on the agenda. First, the approval of minutes. So we're approving the minutes from January 25th, 2024. Commissioners, hopefully you had a chance to review the minutes, which were emailed to you. Would anyone like to propose any changes or ask for clarification? Hearing none, are there any additional questions or comments? If not, we need a motion to approve the minutes for January 25th, 2024.
I move to approve the minutes.
Thank you. And do I have a second?
I'll
Second.
see.
Second. All in favor? Opposed? Abstain? One abstention. Thank you. Next on,
Who was the second?
I'm
Who seconded the comments? Janet, thank you.
We have actually a request, Councilperson Stiles. The public comment period just ended, but I'll give you the floor. Could we go back? Do we need to think about going back to Vivian, can you take care of the time piece?
Yes, so
Great.
I'll let you know when to start, and then I'll say 1 minute when you have 1 minute left. Your time starts now.
Thank you very much. I will not be here long. I just wanted to introduce myself and announce that, in case you didn't know, I'm also, in addition to being the council member for District 32, I am also the chair for Public Facilities, Arts, and Culture. And we will be having another specially called meeting in regards to the voting process and what has happened and not happened ever since for additional transparency on Monday, February 26th at 6 o'clock. I would love for any of you, all of you, to be there. In the meantime, I'm also going to be reaching out to speak with people in the process. So if you have any questions, please feel free to reach me at joy.stiles@nashville.gov. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilperson Stiles. Next on the agenda is our artist spotlight. So Chuck, our Metro Arts Community, Chuck Beard, our Metro Arts Community Engagement Manager, would you introduce our artist spotlight for the day?
Gladly. First, I do want to introduce AJ since he didn't speak up. AJ, if you can raise your hand. He's a AmeriCorps volunteer member that is working with us with a partnership with Hands on Nashville for the next 10 months with community engagement. So, yeah. The February Commission Artist Spotlight is Stephanie Pruitt-Gaines. She is a poet, an arts advocate, and social enterprise entrepreneur committed to using art to improve the ways we live, learn, work, work towards justice, and connect with one another and ourselves. On top of it being an amazing artist and creative beacon for the local creative community, as you already heard, Stephanie is also a former commissioner for Metro Arts, who has also served on the board of Arts and Business Council as well. A native Nashvilleian with a global lens and a TEDx speaker with a heart for self and community care, she has taught Mind Your Creative Business workshops and hosted Poems and Pancakes, bringing international renowned poets to the Donaldson home for the community to enjoy. Stephanie Pruitt-Gaines is as real as it can be, but you don't have to take my word for it. Essence Magazine named her one of their 40 favorite poets. Here today to share some poetic words about her own story, please give a warm welcome to the one and only Stephanie Pruitt-Gaines.
I'm an artist because I'm bringing miscellaneous things up here. You're like, what is this woman doing and why are things ringing? Why are there bells? So I would love to just share how I've kind of cobbled a living together in Nashville as a working artist. When people say that they're poets, I think the subtext that a lot of people assume is, oh, she has a day job, right? And I've definitely needed a day job quite often to make a living in Nashville, but for the past 15 years, I have made a living full-time as a poet, and it is not lost on me that that is a rarity, and it's a blessing, a gift, and the result of a lot of hustle. So I want to share that this body has been instrumental in that in some very positive and some challenging ways, but ultimately, making a living as a poet has been about seeing my publishing and kind of business process as part of my creative process. I enjoy being at my writing table in my studio, as well as at a boardroom table or my marketing kind of mindset table. So I write poems that I love for me. I selectively publish poems that kept braces on my daughter and got her through, school and now, in her career. So in addition to my writing that I love for myself, I've often published physical poems. So the poem is on the forefront there, and then various aspects of kind of themes and issues that I'm interested in the poetry are inside of the shadow box. I've also published, called them my failed poem sculptures, and she lost some of her feather hair as I was pulling out of her bag, but poems that I've worked on, in my editing and revising stage for months and months and months that just aren't going anywhere. I shred all of the copies of the poem, stuff them inside the head, and then create a 3D work that gets at what I was trying to work towards in the poem. So even my failures in my mind aren't lost. I publish poetry as public art, sometimes on walkways and on walls. I have a poem at the Nashville Sound Stadium. I'm now publishing poems on fingernail wraps. I can put any art, image, or text on a fingernail wrap. So for me, the publication process is part of the creativity. It's about how my work lives in the world, and I feel like that's as important as my writing process. I don't have to get every poem out there. 80% of them are not appropriate for public consumption. I recognize that, but I need them for my sanity. But the ones I do publish have put food on my table, and it's been because of some art collectors who have found that literary art can also take a tangible form. It's working with great organizations and businesses that we have found kind of like-mindedness, working with the Nashville Sounds right now, and Strategic Hospitality, a local restaurant firm. So there are creative ways to make a living, but it helps so much when there is a body like this that can advocate for the arts, and when we truly understand all of the intricate and nuanced needs of working artists in our communities, and when we understand what they bring to the table, how we connect the dots in neighborhoods, in schools, in everyday lives, how we build relationships and kind of make that soft tissue really work for everyone in the city. And we know that arts are separate from entertainment, but at times when bodies like this have tried to reduce the artistic benefit to a number, we leave a lot of the stories that really connect the dots to the larger picture. So I'm always excited to do storytelling with groups and use poetry as a way that we tell and show that larger picture. So we're going to do that together in just a moment. We're going to quilt a poem together with everyone who's here in the room. But I will share one quick poem from a chapbook that is free. There's a link to a free space where you can get this chapbook if you like. This poem is called Legacy. I want to be remembered with palms open, extended, seeds ready for pecking beaks to feed upon, a homecoming for the hungry and fed up. I want to be remembered by pages filled with well-shaped words and quiet in my soul, a listening face with ample time. Come on, baby, and sit a spell. I want to be remembered with loads of laughter, rolls of stories, pictures, and jump up and boogie moments that pull the giggles from our tears. I want to be remembered as a stop sign, the blinking light that draws the line, the hand inserting itself, pulling the clog from the drain. I want to be remembered as a thought, the aha moment that sparked it all, the yes and the no, the yellow and the gray, the breeze dancing through a necessary fire. So, I am now going to ask you for some input. If I can find my markers, let's see. Got those in there? Oh, I put them here. Look at that. I was more prepared than I thought I was. Okay. So, I'm going to pose a few questions, and I would love for you to just throw out words or phrases that come to us.
Stephanie, would you mind just pulling that microphone up, just possibly so that the world can hear?
Do this? How's this?
Wonderful.
Okay, does this work? I might be breaking things here. Let's see. How's this? Are we okay audio-wise? Okay, thank you. All right, I'm going to have a few little prompts for you, and I just want you to throw out any word or phrase that comes to mind. You don't have to wait. I'll listen. I'm going to be writing here messily, and we're just going to flow with it and see how this works out. Okay. Nashville Arts, and I don't mean the Metro Arts Commission, but just the arts in the city of Nashville. But you can throw that in there if you want to. Nashville Arts are, and fill in the blank. Thank you. Uh-huh.
Love.
Anybody? Nashville Arts are. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Uh-huh. Thank you. Tell me some vibrant things. What do they taste like, smell like, sound like, feel like, textures, anything?
Neon.
Neon, love it.
Kinetic.
Ah, kinetic. Yes, yes, yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. That's where I'm going. All right, let's throw out one more. Here we make. Here, and you can interpret that however you like. Here we make.
Music.
History.
Yes. Ooh, okay. Yes. I heard somebody say life earlier. Let's get two more. Here we make. Thank you. All right. Okay, let's see what we have here. Whew. In Nashville, we are alive. We are vibrant. We make love actively. We are inspired. In Nashville, we are loud. We are creative. We create belonging and change. Nashville arts are neon, kinetic, funky, colorful. Here we create the spicy, the enriching. We create community. Nashville arts bring bonfires, stories, music, history, new beginnings. In Nashville, we create life. Thank you all. And just, all of that just as a gentle reminder that we make what we make here together, whether consciously or subconsciously. And this has been a group that has had deep influence on the city, whether we've liked it or not, whether we've always been aware of it or not, but we still have that power and impact. And I hope when we really talk and thoroughly work through everything that has been happening, is happening, and can happening, I hope you're excited as I am about the future for the creative community in Nashville, because we truly can make it what we want it to be. And that's not just a Pollyanna view. That's the artist, eternal optimist, even though also overwhelmed and depressed at times. But it's the artist mentality that knows that we make our experience. So thank you all for your time.
Stephanie, thank you so much for that and for letting us be your co-author today. As acting chair today, I'm going to actually move up our chair report for today, which is listed down, and then we will come back right after this chair's report to the Human Relations Commission update. But I wanted, just in the name of time and transparency, just to be sure that we get to this, I wanted to go ahead and share an update. Of course, Chair Perez wanted to be here today, but we saw her yesterday at the Care Committee meeting, and she was becoming unwell. And so she wanted me to extend her thanks to all of you for being here today, and her regret that she could not be here. In response to one email, a request from one of the commissioners that we got today, I wanted to go ahead and let the commission know that Chair Perez sent out a letter this morning, which concerns the formation of an oversight committee. So last week, you should have received a letter from Wally Dietz at Metro Legal discussing this and recommending the formation of this oversight committee. I'll just read, it's a very short letter, Chair Perez's letter. Dear Commission members, under Article 7, Section 5 of the Arts Commission bylaws, ad hoc committee or task forces may be appointed as necessary by the Commission chair. The purpose and scope of ad hoc committees or task forces shall be determined by the chair. I have determined that an ad hoc budget and administrative oversight committee is necessary at this time. The purpose of this committee is to collaborate directly with legal, internal audit, finance, human resources, and other Metro departments to bring a resolution to the many concerns at hand, particularly the financial oversight and human resources issues. And I am appointing the following commission members to this committee: Heather Lefkowitz, that's me, committee chair, Will Cheek, Beverly Watts, Diana Perez, John Neflin, Campbell West, and Timothy Jester. Respectfully, Chair Diana Perez. I'm just wondering, I don't know if there are any questions about that on the part of commissioners, but you should have just received that email earlier. And so we look forward to and welcome this oversight committee and look forward to working, serving as a liaison and learning more about the process and really engaging some of the issues. So we're anxious to get to work. Are there any questions about the oversight committee? Great. And then we also have new committee appointments. So, yes, that's me. So, listen, I've had a rapid ascent here. I am now the secretary. As you remember, Commissioner Love was acting chair last month. Chair Perez was the secretary, so she's appointed me the secretary. So I joined the executive committee. And we have on the grants committee, Commissioner Dupree Love will chair that committee. And on the grants committee, Commissioners Jester, McCoy, and Wade. The advocacy committee, Commissioner Kurtz will chair the advocacy committee, joining Commissioners Cheek and Bell. The steering committee, Commissioner Wade on the steering committee. Public Arts, Commissioner West will continue to serve as chair, and joining Commissioner Watts and Commissioner Nicholas Phillips on the Public Art Committee. The Care Committee, Commissioner Perez will continue to serve as chair, and I, Commissioner Lefkowitz, am also joining that committee. So are there any questions or comments? Commissioner McCoy, you asked to be recognized and as part of my chair report. So I am happy to recognize you now.
Thank you, Chair. In the November meeting, I had a lot of questions about finances and the way that they were being handled, and I think I got a little zealous, maybe overly so, and I owe a very sincere apology to our new finance director, Chrissy Apto, and I apologize if I seem to be rude. I think I was perceived as being rude, but I think it was more in zealousness than anything meant personally.
Thank you, Commissioner McCoy. Any other questions on this chair report before we move on?
Chair Heather, I have one request, and I did attend the executive committee meeting that you all had last week. I was hoping, one, that you all would have had a full discussion of the letter from Metro Legal, but I also realized you had time constraints and it was brand new. But I do hope that we get to address it here. And I do want to renew my request that even though there is this ad hoc committee for budget and administration, that serious consideration be given to the establishment of a budget and finance committee, a standing committee. And again, I would move that my request go back to the executive committee and that you engage in why we need a standing committee. I do think the ad hoc is a good Band-Aid, but that's my motion.
Thank you, Commissioner McCoy. I will say in that executive committee meeting, we did discuss precedent for an ad hoc committee becoming a standing committee. And so that was, I feel like, part of our discussion. Are you correct, Commissioner West?
Yeah, I was there. I agree. I think that there is precedent for it and that it will continue to be discussed. I agree.
Commissioner Cheek?
I also was going to ask if we're going to discuss the letter. It seems to be a pressing matter. It's holding up disbursement of grant funds. Grant funds are one of the most important things we do. Seems that should be on our agenda.
Question, is it on the agenda? Because I agree with Commissioner Cheek. It needs to be discussed today.
It is not on the agenda.
Madam Chair, pursuant to the rules, I would move that the agenda be modified to include a specific discussion of Metro Legal's letter today.
Commissioner McCoy has made that motion. Is there a
I'll second.
second? All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, seeing none, I think we can add that to the agenda and move right into that agenda item. So we are transitioning now from the chair's report to a new discussion of the letter. I can pull up that letter, which was sent to commissioners last week. You'll just bear with me.
Can I ask a clarifying question of legal? If something hasn't been noticed to the public, can we still discuss it?
Because this is part of the director's report, I think it's fairly within the scope of the meeting.
If you didn't hear, the request was that we speak loudly and directly into our mic so that our guests can hear today. So the letter that we are discussing is dated February 7th. and was addressed to commission members. The letter shared that the Director of Finance has determined that a surplus from fiscal year 23 is sufficient to make $2 million in additional funds available to the Arts Commission. In terms of thinking about access to those funds, rising concerns about the management of financial resources led Metro Audit Committee to unanimously approve a review by the Metro Internal Audit Committee. And this review is ongoing. Since December, however, it has come to the Finance Department's attention that additional activities at ART, financial activities, do not appear in compliance with policies and raise questions about overall financial control and stability. And the work of internal audit and finance is becoming more difficult due to ART's workplace conduct issues being investigated by legal. So the request was that we establish this oversight committee made up of 5 or more commissioners, which we have done today, that will collaborate directly with finance, internal audit, law, human resources, and other Metro departments to bring a resolution to the many questions and concerns at hand. And they are prepared to meet with our committee as soon as possible. In addition, this letter indicates that multiple Arts Commission staffers have come to Human Resources to report behavior that may violate Metropolitan Government Civil Service Policy governing workplace conduct. And the Department of Law has engaged Attorney Luther Wright of Ogletree Deacons Law Firm to immediately interview all staff and investigate those allegations. During this investigation, and of course after it, commission employees may not be disciplined or punished or otherwise retaliated against for reporting concerns and participating. And they will report back as soon as Attorney Wright completes his investigation. And I understand he has begun those investigations. We were given a time frame, I think, hopefully, of very quickly, a couple of weeks, 2 to 3 weeks potentially. That is a summary of the letter that we received for the record and to aid discussion. Commissioner Teague, or was it you? I can't see.
Madam Chair, can I go first?
Yeah. What is just 1 second, Commissioner McCoy, audience, or?
Sorry, there's no provisions for audience participation in commission meetings other than the public comment period.
Okay. Commissioner? Oh, I'm sorry. Could you say that again? Pull it towards.
I'm sorry, I said that there's not a provision for audience participation in a commission meeting other than the public comment period at the beginning. Sorry.
Commissioner McCoy?
Thank you. When I received this memo, I realized that my concern about finances was greater than just personal. And I do not believe that there is accountability in how these grants are being handled. I understand that with the larger institutions, the ones that traditionally have been receiving grants, that they are required to provide a certain amount of information to determine that the grant is properly administered. When I found that there were individual grants being given, I have learned that the history of the Thrive grant started at about $5,000 and was awarded to just a few people. Then it increased from about 5 to either 75 or 8,500. By the time I came on board, I believe, and I don't have any documents with me today, but I believe it had gone to about 20 Thrive recipients, and the amount had increased to 20,000. But last year, there was a significant increase in the number of Thrive recipients and an effort to fund what was a new entity called micro organizations that have a budget of less than $25,000 a year. I have been a member of a lot of nonprofits. I don't think I've ever been on a micro agency that has $25,000 budget. That is not enough to even pay one staff person. So it occurred to me, if you give money to a micro agency or to an individual, how do you do it in such a way that it can be accounted for and properly used? And I have had the pleasure of meeting Simone Boyd, who was one of the first recipients of a Thrive Award. I have been very impressed with her diligence in looking at how Metro Arts is funding artists and her concerns and everything that she said today. I think we should all take to heart, because this letter from Metro Legal indicates that we have had funds that have increased consultants from $220,000 to almost $440,000 in 1 year. That money should be going to artists. We have DEI people here in Metro who could do everything as far as training us. They are supposed to be reviewing and approving the materials that we get. To my knowledge, our director has not been in contact with them to request this. And I'm going to stop there because I left all my notes at home. Sorry.
Thank you, Commissioner Corey. Other comments or questions?
Could I follow up on one question?
Yes.
What is our oversight on the small grants, the Thrive program, and the micro organizations? I know we've greatly increased, and I know we haven't added staff, so I'm curious to see how we're overseeing those grants, how they're being used.
Are you speaking of reporting requirements or just to clarify?
Just in general, I apologize, but I just don't really know the details of our oversight on that.
Great. I'm wondering if there, is it appropriate for staff to respond in terms of thinking about that?
Yes.
Not to put anyone on the spot, but I want to open it up to staff if they have, those who are doing this work every day, if you have any thoughts or want to offer a response to Commissioner Cheek's question, we'd welcome it.
So let me just start off, and then I'm happy to have any staff jump in. So this is the first cycle of Thrive. We haven't closed it out yet. It'll be in July that we'll get the final reports back. And as part of the final reports, the grants compliance team always pulls a sampling of all of our work, whether it's with Thrive, which is a procurement process, or our general operating grants. They pull a sample and they audit them and look at them and see if what they said they would do in the application and what they did in the final report align, and if they're in compliance with what their office requires.
Commissioner Cheek, do you have a follow-up?
So we do a sampling. Give us an idea. We've increased the number of recipients. Are we increasing the number of audits that we're going to do? Or, I mean,
I don't know the answer. That would be an answer grants compliance would have to help us figure out, and I'm happy to check with them and let you know.
who's grants compliance?
Kevin Brown is the director of the compliance for grants. It's the Metro agency.
So we don't have our own internal mechanism to look at that?
So our staff go through the reports, but there's a secondary independent review of what our staff have gathered as reports. So our staff review all the final reports that come in, And then there's an independent review of a sampling of those so that what we are compiling meets their standards.
But we don't do the reports ourselves?
No, no, the applicants submit their reports and then staff review them for accuracy.
What's
What
included
reports?
in the report?
I don't have it in front of me, so I'd have to look at it and get it back to you.
I think that's my concern, is that if you have a Thrive recipient, depending on the nature of the art, whether it's poetry, whether it's painting, it's going to be different for each individual. So if somebody's going to review a report, they have to understand what's the criteria that's used to evaluate that the money was appropriately expended. And I have been trying to find out what that criteria is. Can you tell me, please?
So the rubric is in the application, and the final reports are also part of the application. I don't have it in front of me, but we can get it and send it to you.
How is the rubric prepared if you don't know in advance what the artist is going to be doing?
Because we're looking at their community engagement process and seeing what their history is in the community of contributing. And then based on that, we create the rubric for the application, and then both the rubric and application inform the final report.
Who prepares that rubric?
It was prepared by a community-led grants editing process, and then that was brought to the grants committee and the full commission for approval.
And what's the name of that committee?
Grants editing committee.
The Grants Editing Committee, and who are those members?
Local artists and arts organizations.
And who appointed them?
They were selected from an open call.
And who made the open call?
Staff did.
You mean you did?
No, staff did.
If we are the volunteers that have been appointed by the mayor and approved by the council, why would we not be serving on that committee?
So we presented all of this information to the grants committee and the commission last year. And we always work with external panelists for grants and for public art processes. And the commission gets to approve them after it goes through those processes. And that has been the history of how we've been doing things.
I haven't been on the grants committee even a year, but I'm not aware of any of this. And I just want the other commissioners to know this, that a lot of what has happened since I came on board has been a mystery. I haven't figured out how a lot of things are done. And we have committees that are community-oriented, which I didn't know for about 6 months. I never met the finance director. I now have met somebody in person. Thank you. I am puzzled by how things get done because it's not clear and it's not defined anywhere. So that is why I have so many questions about finances.
And listening to that, I'm not sure we still have an idea of how this works. And I mean, my takeaway from this description of the rubric is that the audit process sounds like it's artist dependent, which to me says there is no standard. And respectfully, Director Singh, you should know that and be able to articulate it to us. I mean, that is a crucial function of Metro Arts, and that's why we have this letter from Wally Dietz. Because respectfully, again, you can't articulate to us, you can't describe to us what this process is. And this is going to be the third meeting now that I've participated in where, and my apologies to the public, I still don't have an idea of how this works. So, I mean, unless we can get that today, I'm hoping this Finance Oversight Committee can get to the bottom of this. Because, you know, Commissioner McCoy, I share that concern.
Thank you.
So all of the guidelines, the rubrics, the reports are all on our website, and I'm happy to send them out to all of you after the meeting. And if you still have questions, I'm happy to answer any questions after that.
that doesn't answer what he said, and that is standards. What are the standards? You can have a rubric, but if it is artist dependent, you have to have objective standards by which you can evaluate any process. And that is what we are looking for, is objectivity, clarity, and transparency. To tell me that you have a rubric for one artist is not going to benefit another artist doesn't help at all. So I have been a little vociferous about this because I said it the last time, we are here to be sure that public money is properly used. That's one of our assignments as commissioners. I don't know if people think one piece of art is better than another piece of art. I thought that this was going to be fun, that we would be giving money to people in the community to do art. But I also know that you have to be responsible about how you do that. And that is what has not been forthcoming. And I am a black and white person. I like to see things on a letter that I can read and understand. I'm a numbers person, but I'm not a CPA. And if you explain it to me, I can understand it. That's all I want to do, is be able to understand. And I have been coming to these meetings since last April or May, and I haven't understood it yet. So good luck.
So I think you kind of answered your own question. Arts are all subjective. There is no objective way to measure the arts. We do set criteria such as 1 year in the community. Do you have partnerships? Do you have letters of support? We ask things like that can work across a variety of genres, but we cannot create one objective framework for so many subjective different art forms that we are supporting. And so we can do the grants editing process again and have you all be there and help us figure out if you think there's a way you can do it, then I would love for you to help me think through and figure out how we can do that.
Can I respond real quick? To tell this commission there is no standard that we can audit these grants or any other process because art is subjective, that's crazy. Art is subjective, but the standards by which the public wants us to responsibly handle taxpayer money is not subjective. It cannot be subjective.
Ms. Jackson, did you?
It was my understanding that staff could respond to some questions if we had answers. It is my understanding that the rubric that's being used currently in the grants guideline was developed in consultation with an outside consultant last summer. Dana Parsons, acting as Daniel's chief of staff, helped to develop a rubric that then has been implemented in the current grant cycle that just closed. That is my understanding.
Hello, sorry I came over here for a mic. My name is Sydney Davis. I'm the new Strategic Grants and Initiatives Manager. And to be very frank, the transition between the previous grants manager to myself has been limited. And to raise the question of the rubric that was specifically asked, I specifically asked of that rubric no less than 72 hours ago, and the formulas that would then come from that rubric. And I was told specifically that they were created by Ms. Pearsons herself and that they would not be adjusted for this grant cycle. I have tried very specifically and very pointedly to see where my recommendations as the standing Strategic Grants and Initiatives Manager will come into play, hopefully to clear up some of this confusion and some of the understanding for the sake of transparency. And I don't know if you can tell I'm a little nervous, but with that being said, your questions have not gone unheard. There are questions that I have as someone standing within this position right now that I have hoped, and working in conjunction with the other staff members here, that we were able to clear up, but it doesn't seem that that is going to happen as it stands currently. We would like those formulas to be transparent. I would like those formulas to be transparent. but it just is unfortunately not the case as of right now. So to answer your question, the rubric exists, it just doesn't belong to the staff of Metro Arts.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
Why won't it change?
The understanding that I have been told is that due to it being sent out to the public, and that's what the applications were based on, is how it'll stay for this current grant cycle.
Then we may have no money to disperse. Thank you.
Just very quickly, I want to just acknowledge that there are a lot of people here, community members who do want to speak. There's not a provision for that right now. And I do want to continue with this discussion, but I want to know that we see you and hear you. And if there is time within the agenda, I just want to acknowledge that. But for now, we'll stay with this discussion. Thank you. Yes, Commissioner West.
I want to thank you both, the staff, for speaking to this. I think you answered a couple of my questions. I have several. One is going into this grant cycle that we're in right now. And when I read the guidelines for Thrive and operating, it seemed that no changes had been made from last year going into this year. It seemed like we were being set up again for the same situation that we were walking right back into. So I'd like to ask you, Director Singh, what are the changes that you have made, that you're implementing to, I think that's where a lot of Director Dietz's letter has come from. It's the lack of communication, the lack of transparency with management. And coming from, I've been on commission for 6 years. Prior to that, I've been a development director and executive director for small and large organizations in town for 20 years. On the organizational side, we always needed to submit a mid-year report, an end-of-year report. So I know that in December of 22, I think it was Jonathan and Ian that put forward the flat funding model. After that, I think Dana came on board to work with you. So I just kind of need to know where are we in the process, because it feels like we are going directly in to what we went into last year. And I don't see the changes that have been made. And then financially, looking at some things, I guess I could go ahead and ask this question. I emailed you, Director Singh. Thank you for your response when we all got the financial reports. And for me, I need to see detail with that, because what was looming to me was the $319,487 in the operational red. And I'm on executive committee. I was there last week. You had assured us that the budget would hold with if Ian needed to come on and what have you. Then I see this number, then we're going into grants, and it just left with a lot of confusion. And I think it circles back to the reason for Director Dietz's letter. So I'd like to know directly from you, what is the plan for moving? Because, the applications are in. I think you said there's, 206 for Thrive and 100 and something for operating?
We have 109 for operating and 201 for Thrive.
So what is our plan? Because I know that legal has weighed in. There's no way to pull money from percent funds. Just for the record, with all the mural questions last year, percent funds from public art cannot be used for the murals. So my question is to protect the community and the artists and everyone applying, what is the plan and how are we going to divvy up this money with that number of applications? Last year, I still don't understand how the murals were just kind of segued out. And now I just want to know, what are we doing moving forward so we are really good stewards and that we are really communicating with all the applicants so there's not this expectation and then this huge letdown. I'm an art consultant. I work with artists all over the place. And to put in your own kind of budget, we all know governmental support is, if you're an organization or individual, should never be a given, right? Because we never know what's going to come. However, that being said, I think it really is setting up for a lot of confusion again and a lack of clear expectations of how all this is going to kind of sit out. So, and I do feel similar that I thought we had agreed in commission that the out-of-state, like Dana and that firm, that they were going to be done in terms of the grants. So the kind of reusing that model seems to be kind of, it just doesn't make sense to me. So I'd like to know the answers to those things.
Sure. So Dana came in to facilitate a model that Jonathan and Ian had given, and we worked with local arts organizations and artists to help create that model, and it was up for review. It was up for review on the website, and we tried to incorporate as many changes as we could into the feedback. And then it was also moving from a previous complex structure to a trust-based model where we were trying to help organizations that have previously been kept out of our funding cycle to get into it. So I'm really proud of what we've done. Till last year, we had about 55 general operating organizations. And as many of you know, we tried to run a disparity study. We couldn't even run the disparity study because we didn't have enough BIPOC organizations to run the disparity study. That's how bad the disparity was in our previous grant portfolio. From the time that I've come, so we've increased from 55. Last year we got 80-some applicants, of which close to 10 were BIPOC organizations, and this year we have 109 general operating organizations. And Thrive, as you know, had 40% BIPOC artists applying. And that doesn't mean we're focusing just on the BIPOC artists. That means there are 60% still white artists benefiting from Thrive. So I'm addressing a whole range of complex situations that the commission inherited and that I inherited, right? So it's not just about the grant piece or just the cultural planning piece or whatever single thing. There is a large issue of structural racism that's happening in Metro, and I'm trying to move through it with all of your advice and guidance. Everything we did last year was brought to the grants committee, was brought to the commission. All of you voted on the application. All of you voted on the new formula. If we hadn't changed the formula last year, this year's general operating grants would be at about $9.5 million as opposed to $6.6 million. So I want to say that we were actually fiscally prudent in moving towards what we did last year and simplifying the formulas and scaling it based on the budget size, because if we didn't, the expectation would be that if we had done the 20% flat across each organization, the budget would have been 9.5 that we would have asked of the mayor. Secondly, all of the mayoral candidates, including Mayor O'Connell, pledged that they would support Metro Arts at 1%. I don't know when they will deliver on that promise, but I'm hoping that this will be the beginning of the year where they'll start beginning to help us move towards that promise. And we have put in that request to budget, and there's a 2-month process between now and April when it goes to the mayor's office and then the council, and there are a lot of other places where it'll go, and then we'll know what happens. And then we'll have to go and make the same case we did with council like we did last year. Like this commission asked me to write up how to defend Thrive, and you all asked me to give you the statistics of how it impacts BIPOC organizations, and I did that. Councilperson Nancy Van Ries stood up and argued for the money to stay with Metro Arts instead of going to the Morris building based on information you all asked me to write up. So I gave you that language and we got that money. So there are processes as we go forward to keep petitioning the mayor and the council for the funding that we need. I've been asked to reach out to the community and open up our closed processes, and I'm proud of what we've done, and I'm here to support them, the artists and the arts organizations we brought into the process.
May I respond?
Yes,
I'm sorry.
Commissioner Neplin.
What I understood Commissioner West's question to be was, what's the plan? What I heard was, look what I've accomplished, and if I didn't accomplish it, it's not my fault. What's the plan? Because there's money that needs to be, that's been promised that has not been distributed to artists. What's the plan? That's the question.
So once the oversight committee reviews whatever, I haven't seen whatever these allegations are, so I can't respond to something I haven't seen. Once the oversight committee looks at it and once legal releases it, then we'll be able to send the contracts out.
So that's the plan. It falls on the oversight committee to accomplish these goals.
I can't respond to something I haven't seen.
Perhaps to restate my question, what is the plan internally within the agency to address, because as we know, the 2 million that came in this year, the extra 2 million, that was a one-time thing. So it's always been my understanding, as most of you know, I advocate for the arts. Like it's in my being. That being said, I feel like it's a big gamble to think that we're going to go in and walk out with $8-9 million this year in light of the audit, the HR inquiry, all of the things. So that's kind of where I'm sitting here looking at the crowd and then thinking about organizations. How are we making a plan to say, the question remains is how do you decipher between thrive and operating? How is that going to look? Internally, what are you thinking? What is your plan for all of these applications coming in with a limited amount? Let's just go with a $3.5 million number, right? So let's say it's $3.5 million. How are you planning on that working better than it did last year?
I will make the same recommendation I did last year. I will look at the history of organizations that have been kept out of our Metro Arts funding cycle, or artists who have been kept out of Metro Arts funding cycle, and I would prioritize them over the other organizations. As we know from our historical data, 88% of our budget has gone to organizations with budgets over $500,000. And so I think it's time to fix that and address the disparities as we go forward.
Thank you, Director Singh. Staff on the grant side, is that how you all feel as well?
Let me interrupt because I think that really puts our staff in a very difficult position.
You're right, thank you.
But I think based on the comments that I heard earlier, that change could come about by our new grants person. Oh, there you are, sorry. I have met with her because I was the only one on the grants committee. I have been tremendously impressed with her experience in grants, and I think she could probably create a new schematic that would be, it's a lot of work, but I think she could do it. I don't think we need a consultant. I don't think we've ever needed a consultant. And I think the people on our staff are bright, and we've seen two of them who aren't on our staff anymore who are very articulate. I think that the change comes from our staff, and I think it has to be significant. And I will be working on the grants committee with whoever else I'm on there with. I think we got 2 new people, to be sure that we don't have a repeat of last year when I kept trying to find out how do these, I couldn't understand it for like 3 or 4 months, so I didn't even vote in July because I didn't understand it. I like to think I'm reasonably intelligent and can understand if it's explained to me, but I have found somebody I can talk to.
I'm
sorry.
If I could, thank you.
Yes.
As a new member of the Grants Committee, I also have very many questions and am in my second meeting highly confused as to what the process is. And so as a new Grants Committee member who will be making decisions in the next 3 to 4 months around this, I think it is very important that we understand some clear chronological history and accounting of what these grants have been. And I believe I've heard that this information is available on the website. It would be very helpful to me for someone to directly send that kind of background information to us, because it is unconscionable that we potentially do go back into the same exact thing this year. And so I need a clear foundational understanding before we can actually make some really good concrete decisions about what happens. I'm in favor of paying attention to the BIPOC organizations and artists who have been unheard, have not received awards and things of that nature, in deference to those who have received awards. I'm in favor of paying attention to all of those artists, and we have a responsibility to be able to understand the quagmire before we then begin to make really important decisions in just a really short amount of time. And so whatever information we can get, however we can be supportive of staff, that includes you, Director Singh, however we can be supportive in making sure that those things are timely and that we have enough information to make good quality decisions come April through June, whatever this process is. I'm very interested in doing it. It's going to, I believe, be heavy lifting. But we don't have the capacity to not vote come July, even though I may really want to do it. We don't have the capacity to do that. And so as much information as we can get, and trust me, we're getting a lot of information in this very short period of time that we new commissioners have been on this commission. But I need some more information, very concrete, direct information about history, about expectation for what we do. What are we going to do with this additional $2 million? How is it that we then need to also engage with council around what it is that we actually need? And then how do we make it equitable across the board to Thrive and operating grants applicants? Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Wade. I want to give staff an opportunity to comment. I know Commissioner West asked a question. We don't want to put you on the spot, but I want to give you the chance to speak if you.
No, that's fine. And to answer your question directly about the differences, though it has been my request of either an update of our SOPs here within the process, the patterns that were started last year, to my understanding, are slated to continue unless changed above me.
Thank you very much. That helps a lot. And I think that's kind of what I was getting to with Director Singh. If we are in the same position as we were last year, following the same rubric, it feels like the same fallout could possibly happen. If I could circle back to my second question, just to move this along, regarding the deficit that we're in, I appreciate your response to my email. At the same time, it's my understanding that there was another $300,000, maybe $330,000 that was moved from Thrive into consultant funds. Can you address that? Was that done or was it not?
It was not done. Nothing moved from Thrive to consulting.
Was anything, or
We are
from
not
any
able to
part?
pay for procurement processes from grants.
Right.
And so we moved whatever the Thrive amount was into our contractors or consulting line item, because that's what accounting asked us to use as a placeholder, because there isn't a placeholder just for Thrive. And so we moved it based on accounting's advice, and we paid the Thrive applicants from that money that was moved.
And that total was?
It was probably $900 and some thousand.
Maybe we're talking about two different figures. I'm sorry.
I want to speak to the transfer of the $700,000 from grants to consultants and professional services, by which I was told exactly what Director Singh said, and that is he had to do that in order to be able to fund the Thrive recipients, because legal had said, or finance had said, you can't consider individuals as grantees. That was for art agencies. So they had to move them, and he took $700,000 from grants and put it under consulting and the other part that fails me right now. But I have since spoken with Ian Myers, who I've never met, who apparently was the finance director. He never came to a meeting, so I appreciate you being here today. And he said it is merely a matter of going over and talking with finance as to how to properly categorize the funds. It doesn't necessarily have to go under consulting and professional services. It can be, and I want to ask if it cannot be, a subcategory of grants and have a separate little budget number. But whatever it is, it requires the executive director to go over and talk to finance and say, how can we properly put these monies where they will be designated for Thrive, whatever it is. One of the problems is that our director has not reached out to these people in a work capacity. We are supposed to have a working relationship with Metro Parks, with the public libraries. That has not been developed. To my knowledge, it doesn't exist. That's where we put some of our art, in the libraries, in the parks. So the failure of communication is just one problem that we have. as board members, but it is bigger than that. There is a lack of communication from the head of this commission that is woefully missing.
I would like to just make a comment.
Yes, Commissioner Watt.
Thank you all for all of the information you've shared today. The one problem I have, it's not coherent, and I'm a process person. And so I need to know what this means, what that means, and how it relates to the different programs and issues, and where there are issues and problems. I think any organization can define where they have deficits, where they put things in place to eliminate deficits or address them. I also believe that we're talking apples and oranges this morning. And the apples and oranges work like this. We've got this program, but I still don't know what it means. So I agree with you. And then I hear things that are going on inside that may or may not be, because don't have enough information to make an assessment, an accurate process assessment. And this is what I'm talking, is process. I've heard a lot of questions, I've heard answers, and the information is okay, but it's not, it's like a jigsaw puzzle. And as a result, the jigsaw puzzle leaves me with many, many more. Because when you started this, I wrote standards for submission, standards for evaluation, and standards for exceptions. Those would be simple things to know. I also input the word rubric in the website. I got 2 things that came up. Now, that's one issue, and I'm one of those people that goes to the websites all the time. Put it in, I got 2 items that came up. When I went to grants, I saw many more things that came up under rubric. It would have been nice if they'd all popped up. And if it's rubric, something should have popped up under rubric. So some things going on with the program itself that doesn't allow me and or the public to get that. And I think finally the issue for me is, if I'm submitting a grant, what do you expect me to do? When do you expect me to do? And I see you have a lot of forms, but I think that would help me as a commissioner to understand those things. You put the grants out, you have people, have staff and others review it, you make some assessments, and you provide some training, and I see that on there. All of that's there. Some of that is helpful, I think, in terms of process. But when you make the final decision, I see a lot about organization size and dollars and cents in the rubric, but I still don't get the sense, and I don't care which kind of art it is, okay? There is some way to judge basically the standards of what I as an artist must do to present something, whether you gave me some money, what did I tell you I was going to do? When did I do it? What did it meet the standards that have been in place, or were they adjusted? I think that's the things, those are the questions that's rolling around in my mind, because we're talking a lot, but A plus B has to equal C. I'm one of those persons.
Commissioner, can I just say one? I want to continue this discussion. I want to be mindful of time. It is 1:30. We do have some items for public art that we need to make a decision on, and the staff needs us to do that. I also want to make sure that everyone is got a chance to speak who wants to speak, and that we are cognizant of that too as well. So I'm just being mindful of time, and these are things that will continue. And of course, in the oversight committee, it's my understanding that that these kinds of discussions can continue.
Commissioner Watts, I just want to make a comment. Thank you for everything that you've said. I have been coming to these meetings, and this is the first time that the board has been able to engage in a conversation. We're told we can't talk to each other outside of a public meeting, so you're not going to get any information from me independent of today. And it is, in a way, jumbled. But for the new members, we have never had an opportunity to talk to each other, and I'm mindful of the time, but this is what we're supposed to be doing. And so it is kind of scattered as things come to mind. I don't know how to organize it, but there does need to be more structure. Thank you. Bye.
It seems to me that offering more time for these meetings would help that a lot. 1 hour is not nearly enough for what needs to happen.
Thank you.
I think one way to do that is to probably cut down the agenda so that we give each topic the ample time needed to come to a resolution, since we're not going to meet again till next month.
Commissioner Nichols.
Sorry.
Sorry. Who? Oh, yes, Chris.
Thank you, guys. I was just going to give a brief statement that.
Could you introduce yourself too, just so people know?
Sure. My name's Chris Afote, Finance and Operations Director here. Can everyone hear in the back? Yep. Awesome. So thank you guys all for being here, first of all. I don't know why I sound like a game show host, but I just wanted to say that I am deeply committed to making sure that we steer the ship the correct way to make sure we get back to the work, right? What we're here to do, what I signed up to come to work for every day. These are artists, but they're not only just artists, they're also friends of ours, they're neighbors of ours. These are folks that I've known since being here in Nashville. So I know it's imperative for me to be here, not only as the finance person, but also just being represented to be a voice for them. But also just wanted to make sure there are questions. I have questions about our accounting, our financing, our budget, our totals, our deficits. I'm currently working with our accounting department to fix so that we can have more transparency about our numbers, not only on the internal side, but also externally. When it comes to reports, financial reports. And I'm definitely open and willing to work with commissioners and make sure you guys have what you need to make those correct, informed decisions for next steps on what we can do to move forward. So that's it.
Thank you, Chris. Commissioner West.
I guess I've got one last question, or just something that we can circle back to. Thank you, Chris, by the way. Thank you so much. In our executive committee meeting, Director Singh, you assured us that the budget was good, right? But you also said you really needed Ian to stay on board as a contractor, correct? And so when I saw the deficit, I thought, well, how are we going to afford all of this? How are we going to pay for all of this? Because we're at a loss already, and then your need to have Ian, and I think my question to you last week was, wouldn't the auditors, this is specifically regarding the audit, wouldn't the auditors be calling Ian in for questions? You said you needed Ian because he was the keeper of the knowledge, correct? Because you weren't part of the budgeting process. No, this is all audit. And so I'd ask if we did agree to keep him on as a contractor. First, was Ian on board with that? Second, can we afford that? And third, is it necessary that we do? And after getting the financial reports this week, it left me with a lot of concerns, and the detail was not there that I could see where we are. And so we can circle back to that, but I would like to get that on the record, just that this deficit and then your request of us to retain Ian services, it's confusing.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
I attend a lot of meetings, and usually when you have committees, that's where the work is done to bring back to the bigger committee. So I'm one of those people who tends to object to committee by the whole, but standards need to start at a variety of levels, and they rise up. And that committee work is always done in conjunction that I've ever worked with staff, their expertise, their knowledge, in addition to any other resources, and it's a give and a take kind of a conversation, unlike, I think, a formal commission meeting, which may have more standards for things we have to review. I'm also one that says if I have to make an assessment of it, give it to me in a timely fashion so I can write all the questions down and get those done. So I think it's a process of what standards, who's doing what, and not necessarily expanding the meeting, but putting standards to see if we can come up with something based on a process that gets us there without having to spend a lot of time. Because if I'm only looking at oversight, if I'm only looking at public art, there is a more detailed conversation around those elements to come back to the full body.
Commissioner Jester.
To Commissioner McCoy's point about us not being able to talk together, legal, would you mind giving us the legal ramifications or just the legality around the kind of conversations we can have? Because I feel like there's been some confusion about that.
Yes, the Open Meetings Act requires that these kind of conversations where you're talking about commission business be made in public because the public is supposed to know the basis for your decisions. And so it's not supposed to be something where you would talk outside of this and then come in and say, hey, we've decided, I move this, I second this, and yeah, let's do it without any discussion, because that means that, the public business has not been conducted in public. You are allowed to receive information outside of a public meeting, of course, and you can go talk to each other and not discuss something that's going to be on the agenda. But if it's commission business, then the Tennessee Public Open Meetings Act requires that discussion take place in public.
So can I have a follow-up to that? Because some of the commissioners told me that legal told them they could call each other and email each other. And I was told by Tessa in August of 23 that commissioners can only be BCC'd and they shouldn't be emailing or calling each other directly. So I just wanted to get some clarity on that so we're all on the same page.
Sure. Commissioners can talk to each other or email each other about personal things that are not commission business. But if it's commission business, it is to take place at a public meeting.
Point of clarification, if possible. So commission business being information that new commissioners don't have any idea of, we can't ask another commissioner about it.
That was my question.
If you're asking about the history of this commission, I would recommend that be provided to you in a public meeting, because it's going to affect it's going to be the basis for your decisions going forward.
History, actions, grants, all of those things have to take place here. Is there then, is there then an opportunity for commissioners to speak directly with staff outside of Director Singh to get very clear, concrete information that I don't have to BCC the entire group on, et cetera?
Yes, commissioners can talk to staff. There's no prohibition on that in the public records, in the Public Meeting Act.
If I may, and we are very eager to speak with you. So reach out anytime.
Also, for point of clarification, we didn't say that we could just talk to each other at will. I think the culmination of a decision was the language that we heard about whether or not we could be talking to each other, that we couldn't talk to each other if it was like in the direction of a decision. So.
Yes, the language used by the statute is that you are not to deliberate towards a decision, except in a public meeting. And then, obviously, the more you're talking about commission past, the closer you are to deliberating towards something in the future.
Commissioner West.
I know we need to move on into PAC business and such, but I think that I was just thinking, why wasn't the letter from Director Dietz included on the agenda to speak to today?
I consulted with Chair Perez, and she was going to have that be part of the Budget and Oversight Committee's discussion. And so I sent her the agenda, and she could have added anything she wanted to add to it. Sure. So I sent the draft agenda to Chair Perez, and she looked at it and approved it. And if it was something that the commissioners needed to add, or if she wanted to add it, she could have added.
Thank you. I just think in light of a lot of commissioners leaving, new commissioners coming on, the audit, the HR piece, the finance piece, it's something that we could have spent more time on and maybe rethought the agenda so other people didn't get pushed off. But this was something I think we all agree had to be discussed. So I just wanted to.
Hello.
Could I ask a question?
Go ahead.
Jesse Ross, Public Art Coordinator. I just want to make sure that we do have time to get to what's on the agenda, which is the Human Relations update on the Commission. I just want to invite all of you as commissioners to understand, the gravity of what you're doing, and it's not meant to be fun. It won't be fun. It's a lot of work. You will not get all the information you need just showing up to these meetings. There's a lot of work that's going to have to be done, ask us, we'll provide what we can. You're going to have to do a lot of research to get yourself acclimated. One of the things that's a clear mission and value of ours is equity. And if that is not something that you're committed to, I would please ask you to consider, like, you know, if this is the right role for you. And if it is, understand that it's going to cost something. It's going to be very difficult. You're not going to be the most popular person in a room or in the city if you actually implement equity. And a lot of the things that we keep saying we ran into last year, what we ran into was August and pulling a vote and coming back in November and having a revote and switching everything. And I could see in commissioners' eyes who talked about equity melt, change their vote, and then step off of the commission. So please have some courage. If we're going to implement equity, it's going to take all of us, and it's going to be work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair Heather, I have one last...
Just a second. I was going to recognize Commissioner Cheek first, and then I will take you. And then we do, because to your point, we do want to make sure, especially that we vote on the things that the staff needs.
For the Ad Hoc Budget and Administrative Oversight Committee, would it be possible for us to have someone with staff that has the grants that we need to review so that we can make an analysis and a recommendation that those be approved and funded? I understand the finance director is waiting for clear instructions from us about what should happen by us, meaning that committee. So if we could be prepared at our first meeting to be able to have enough information to analyze that particular issue and have someone on staff that's prepared to be able to answer the questions so we can respond. I understand that the city is ready to cut checks if that committee can make a recommendation. But we need to do so in an informed way, and we need the information before us. And time is important because those checks, I think, were expected to go out in October. And through no fault of ours, they haven't. So if we could do that, that would be great.
Thank you.
One last comment, and that is, I would move that we terminate the contract for the consultant Dana Parsons because we are using still the structure that she used last year, and I think we have to authorize our staff person to implement the new way in which we're going to award grants and determine how people get money. I don't see spending over $100,000 for something that has caused us so much grief. And I would like to go to something that is more understandable. And being on the grants committee, I feel confident that our new chair will be able to come up with criteria and a procedure that will work for everyone. Thank you. That's my motion.
Commissioner Heather, or Lacowitz, Vivian.
Yes.
I just wanted to mention, someone said that we have a meeting next month. We do not have a meeting next month. Next month is March. Our next meeting is April 18th. If the commission would want a meeting, and I know my staff, my team is gonna hate me for this, but if the commission wants a meeting next month, it would have to be a special called meeting. And everyone would have to agree to a date, and we would need, in my opinion, because I'm the one calling you all, we would need all of you here.
We have reserved the room for the third Thursday in March, so if that works, we can hold a meeting.
So we have two things we need to discuss. The motion, so Commissioner McCoy, you've made a motion to terminate the contract of Dana Parsons, who's been serving as a consultant.
And I understand that it is probably month to month being paid rather than being awarded as a lump sum contract. However, that arrangement has now morphed into her serving as a consultant for the cultural review, and I am not clear on how that happened or why it happened, but for the money that we have to oversee, we are not getting our money's worth, and I think it should end.
Okay, that is the motion. Is there any discussion?
Do you feel confident to do all the things that Dana was doing?
If given the autonomy to do the work authentically, absolutely. But to be very frank, I feel as though I am a surrogate for someone who does not live here. So if we are to continue the way that we are now, even though I was not here and a good portion of the staff was not here, a good portion of the commissioners were not here, I do not see it ending positively. And realistically, I'm not in a space to make changes. I have requested, I have very directly asked to be able to implement some of my recommendations, and I was told I had to wait until April. So to answer your question, yes, but the parameters would have to be different.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, it could potentially be helpful, but if we were to terminate the contract today, it could put you in a much worse situation.
No, it would put me in a position to make decisions if my staff and like the fellow staff had the ability to make decisions that weren't going to be overrided. It's hard to say that you're being trained when the decisions were already predetermined.
Thank you.
So we have a motion. Do we have a second? Or wait, Chris, do you have a comment? Do you have a comment? Huh? Oh, no. Do you want me to, do you have a comment? Go, please.
Can we specify, when we say terminate contract for Dana, there really isn't a contract, so to speak? So I'm just trying to find out, what does that mean? Like, what are we ending with Dana, so to speak?
Can we just terminate her services?
I mean, mentally I have already, but financially I don't have that. Yeah, I'm gonna just turn this off.
I mean, to be frank, I was under the impression that it had already ended, but then I started to receive emails from her personal email to my personal email. And then once they weren't responded to, I was CC'd with additional members on the staff to then continue training. I have not been trained. I have assimilated. And if I have the ability to not assimilate, I feel as though I can do a justice to the grants process.
Commissioner Wade, did you have something?
I did, to Christina's point. What do we lose by immediate termination? And are we talking immediate termination? Is there something that we need to have, knowledge we need to have, that then empowers our director of grants? And I apologize for jacking up your title, but how do we not put the folks who are left here in such a situation that they are unable to really make good decisions and do good work? If what we are hearing is ideas, suggestions, agency autonomy is overridden, removing this consultant does not sound like what we need to do, but there sounds to be a need for even further oversight of the work of, and if there is not a contract that dictates exactly what the deliverables are from the consultant, that also is a very, very untenable situation for us even to make a decision about terminating this contract today. Because what is proprietary information that Ms. Parsons has that we then lose access to, that then also makes our situation even more difficult? So I don't know who this question is to, but who makes the decisions around what our staff team has? I make an assumption that it is you, Commissioner, Director Singh, but who and how are the decisions made around what our staff team are able to do and what decisions they're able to make in order to continue to drive the work that happens right here in the city, separate from someone emailing from their personal email to another personal email that seems would fall outside of some kinds of open record, something that we are responsible for? I'm completely and totally confused by how we are operating and how we're expected to operate going forward. And I understand why people left. I don't even know that question, let alone who the question is to.
So we have purchase orders and we have a call for proposal with a clearly defined scope. I'm happy to share all of that with all of the commissioners. And we also have all of the documentation for each scope that we get from the consultants as part of their work. So we have all of that information, but I'm happy to share the purchase order and the scope of work that was attached to each purchase order that went out.
So we're using a purchase order and a scope of work instead of a contract? Is that what I'm hearing?
So for different amounts, there are different pieces of work. So if it's under $25,000, we can use a purchase order.
There's no contract, plain and simple.
Was that method used specifically to stay below the $25,000 amount so we didn't have to use a contract?
No, it was
Yes.
because we didn't know how long the terms were going to be for. And we asked HR in May of 2023 to start the hiring process. And we were told by HR that they cannot start the hiring process till July 1 because the salary grades were changing and the levels of the salaries couldn't be fixed. So then it was October when we finally got the positions hired. So when we started this process out, we didn't expect to keep extending or adding on purchase orders. It was done just because we had the information. We thought we were going to start the hires in May, but it was in May we were told that we couldn't start hires till council passed the resolution and the new fiscal year started in July.
So we have the opportunity now since October to implement a contract instead of continuing to use month-to-month purchase orders?
We haven't used any purchase orders month to month at all.
Okay.
Can I ask a quick question for clarity? Because I'm hearing that there's some HR issues in terms of hiring. If you had a purchase order for X, whatever X is, once you hire the person, are there then some deliverables by whoever is doing that work so that then whoever is responsible, meaning the person you hired, can move on? Is there a time limit on that, or is it?
Yes, we have files and we have deliverables that they have to provide as
Okay.
they transition.
Well, in terms of the transition, if October certain people got hired, and if some people got hired in December or some people got hired in January, what's the timeline for finishing that up? Because that's one of those key factors. If I'm your consultant, you should tell me that, hey, you got 30 days to get in here and do whatever with the new incumbent. And if we need you, we may call you, but that's something that we do in writing, but I don't understand that, so.
To be very frank, I'm so sorry. To be very frank, to answer your question, I can only speak to myself. At one point in time, there were two grants managers, myself and an additional person. There is no transition. There is no transition.
And that's what I'm trying to hear. If there was one, what does it look like? I'm back to process, not necessarily you individually, but I get it.
And so I can
get
only
you.
speak on behalf of myself. I
yeah.
have very plainly asked to either create an SOP that has buy-in from the staff or to see one that was previously created, and there has not been one. And if there has been one, it has been malleable by the words and the work of the consultant.
Commissioner Lefkowitz, can I address the motion that's?
Yes,
Yeah.
please, Commissioner Naplet.
Commissioner McCoy, I agree completely with what you're saying, and I'm ready to pull the plug. But but what I'm hearing from the staff is if we pull the plug now, they may not be empowered to do what they need to do to fill that position, and it may be putting us, the commissioners, in an HR oversight position to make sure that the staff can do what they need to do. That's what I'm hearing.
That's not the case.
Okay.
I have the ability to do the job. I just haven't had that opportunity to do it. That's all there is. I mean, if we want to use her work all lives within a SharePoint zip file that's bigger than Christmas, but realistically, none of us appreciated the formulas and the rubrics that were created last year. So either way, whether she's here or not, we have to start from scratch, and I just don't think we should pay for scratch.
And someone, I like that. And someone raised the issue, I believe it was Commissioner Jester, is whatever's in this consultant's file. I heard you say it's in a share file, but whatever's in the file, is it is it proprietary information that we're going to be able to take and use and build upon?
Well, there's a copy of it on my computer already. So
There you go.
And I guess the question is, do we need to utilize the information that is on your file? Or will you have to rebuild it in order to apply it come April for decision-making?
I'm sure there's going to need to be some adjustments. The basis has always been the same schedule that has moved for whatever reason. But in terms of the large building blocks, I think between the history of some of the older staff and the people who have been here, there's more than enough information to be able to continue a grant cycle. It's just that there are so many external voices. It's just not needed. I was hired off of the fact that I can do the job, and at one point there were 3 people here doing it, and none left transition plans. I have no issue creating my own. We have more than enough time between the applications that have already been accepted and going through their technical review versus the time that we have to get to the actual dissemination of funds. I specifically asked for the grants committee to meet March, February, but I was told it had to wait until April to start the conversations. If we get the ability to start the conversations now between teaching and learning of the new commissioners versus having the autonomy to do my position, we should have more than enough time and more than enough brain power to make sure that we're not putting our artists and our community in the same capacity. I am a Nashville native. I'm an HBCU grad and an adjunct professor. I teach critical thinking. I have absolutely all of the capacity to do this. I've just been hindered with the autonomy to do the position.
Do you need from us a request for the special meetings to happen in February and March in order to be prepared?
Yes.
To do it? You need a
I feel like that makes
request from us?
sense. Yeah.
Do I need to make a motion?
We need to meet more.
It sounds like we need to resolve Commissioner McCoy's motion first.
Yes, let's resolve Commissioner McCoy's motion first.
I'd like to second the motion.
Commissioner Cheek is seconding the motion. A question? I'm going to go ahead and take the vote then. That's what I'm going to do. All in favor of, I want to state this correctly, all in favor of terminating the contract of external consultant Dana Parsons effective immediately. In favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention?
I have a question before I am able to vote.
Yes.
Has anyone seen her contract? Is there a 30-day limit? We can't just get up today and say, we don't need you tomorrow?
There's nothing.
There's nothing.
No.
So there will be no legal ramifications for
No,
us.
it's a purchase order, so we can terminate it for you.
That's what I needed. Thank you. And there is another aye.
Another aye. Commissioner Watts?
That was my question. I can't vote on something that. Even though I hit the button, I think I hit it again. Even though I don't have an objection to doing this, I do have an objection to doing this in a vacuum, and that the reason and what we're voting on is not public. That's what I have the objection to. Because if I'm voting to do something, I want to know I'm voting to do a purchase order that will do A, B, C, D, E immediately. And so that was all I was looking for, is the specifics of it all.
Noted. So I want to be clear, an abstention?
I'm still abstaining until I can get that data, because I think that data is absolutely necessary moving forward. Whether it's staff that does something or whatever, that we understand what the process, this is me and process, I'm sorry, this is me and process, that we understand the process and that the public understands the process, and that we move some of the other things away so that the process is there. How you implement the process can create problems, don't get me wrong, but that we understand the process as commissioners, so.
Noted. Thank you.
Can I get
So that motion carries, I believe.
Can I get
sorry.
I just need a clarification.
Oh,
The only
sorry.
abstention that I have is Commissioner Watts. Is that correct?
Is that correct? Did I get a second? I
Yes,
did.
you
Okay,
did.
good. Thank God.
Thank
Yes. Commissioner Cheek?
I wanted to echo about the grants committee and having a meeting. One of the things in process, One of the things that the commission has historically done is it's looked at what the grants are and has reasoned through the process. And I've lost some faith that the committees themselves get enough information from staff to be able to digest the decisions that they're making. We seem to be called together with a final proposal, and we as commissioners don't weigh in. It's just presented to us. So to echo what I'm hearing from other commissioners, if we could, and at the committee level, make sure that we're meeting and we have enough time to go over the matters, in particular grants, that would be very helpful.
Thank you. I believe that I need some more a motion on what, I want to make sure that we resolve this before we leave. So do we need another motion regarding a March specially called meeting? And do we need?
No. I will send out an email.
Okay, we're gonna
as soon
do
as
it.
this is over.
Great.
And as we can find a date, matter of fact, I'll send out a doodle of specific dates, and we'll go from there. And then I will send out an email, blind copy you all, including legal, and making sure that we have a date, everyone it is agreed upon.
Great. And is there anything else that we needed to do in terms of the committee meeting to support you, or that's resolved?
We can set that up too.
I have a question. Is there any way that,
Yes, Commissioner, yes.
is there any way that we as a commission could ensure or at least recommend that Ms. Davis gets what she needs if she's going to be taking over this role with the termination of Dana? You know, sometimes she might be, I don't want by us voting to terminate Dana, that she is subjected to any type of retaliation or anything like that. We just, as a commission, we would like to make sure or ensure or recommend that she gets what she needs in order to fulfill that role.
All of the files have been transferred over already. Yeah. Yes.
Would you do us the favor of being vocal about what you might need as it comes, since you can talk to us, but we can't talk to each other?
Yeah, I know in the sake, now or in the committee, or I know in the sake of town, I really want to make sure that Public Arts gets what they need as well.
Yes. I will say, Commissioner Jester, I've had a number of conversations with staff, and again, I just want to reiterate, they're lovely and open to talking, so it's very helpful. Yeah.
We can connect, and I just would like to say thank you publicly. Just thank you. So.
And I'm going to move on now because it's 2:03, and I just want to, again, in the spirit of supporting the staff, skip to G, which is the Public Art Committee, because I know that we deferred some decisions last month and that we want to help them do their work and not impede. So we're going to hear some project updates. And Jessica, Commissioner West, is this one of you?
We're okay. We could do one of two things. We could either defer. We'll certainly defer one of these because it's less time sensitive for the sake of time, and we have guests in the room from out of town. I don't know if we are okay deferring all of our agenda items to a March meeting or to April, so just want to put that out there. What are y'all's thoughts given the time?
As long as it's good with you all we just had our PAC meeting last Thursday, and looking at these items.
We're okay to.
Deferring would be okay.
Yeah.
I'm good with that.
So we will defer. Do I need to vote on that? I can just decide.
I would go ahead and defer. I mean, I'm sorry, I would go ahead.
A motion to defer.
Make a motion, sorry.
Okay. Can I get
Second.
a motion and a second?
I'll move to defer.
Move to defer and a second. Ms. Watt?
Yes.
Great. So all in favor of deferring these items in Public Art to next month?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Great. I'm not sure how this works when we run over. Can someone tell me?
I think it's the chair's discretion to determine if you need to shorten some of the time periods, perhaps, or defer.
Well, I know that, for example, I skipped over Reverend Tucker, and I don't want to do that. So we have Reverend Tucker here which was next on the agenda. So we could move to that. Reverend Tucker's here to provide an update on the Title VI complaint filed with the Human Relations Commission. So Reverend Tucker, thank you.
Good afternoon. I also want to just say welcome to all of the new commissioners and thank you for your service. I think as Nashville continues to grow, we're all seeing how the work of the volunteers on the boards and commissions really have an impact on what happens in the city. And so I'm grateful for you giving of your time to serve. What's being passed out is a report summary that was given to our commission that kind of outlines the way in which we are approaching this. Our inquiry is limited. It's limited to the July vote to do something historic that this group has never done, the executive session in between, and the August vote. That's basically the issue that MHRC is looking at and whether or not that qualifies as a Title VI violation. So in the information that you have, it's just random information. I do think it's interesting to know for the record that since this organization's inception, 70% of its funds have basically gone to 10 institutions. And so even as you work toward whatever you're going to do next year, MHRC, which our mission is to promote and to advocate for the general health, safety, and well-being of all Nashvillians, would hope that you would be able to exercise some courage in this regard. So this is the outline. This is what it ultimately is going to be. We're probably a week or so from being finished. We really, really want to get it done and get it back to you, because in our quest of just looking at this one question, there are other observations around other processes that have occurred that I think need to be talked about also. So we're going to have all that in there. I'll take some questions if you have some. Also of note, if you look at the background of what we've done, we have interviewed all of these witnesses, 14 of the 15 arts commissioners, 3 staff members, 2 consultants, 6 complainants, and probably looked at over 50 hours of your meetings and your minutes, some of which are incomplete, like today. This is going to make a bad recording because you can't hear everybody. So even in trying to transcribe stuff, we could not hear. And so you've had several meetings in critical times where you cannot hear. But I'll take any questions if you have. Again, the complaint was brought by 6 complainants, but they also had 68 other individuals that signed on to the complaint, 32 of which were grant applicants, and they were also adversely impacted by it. Questions or anything, but we just wanted to give you an update, and we were asked to come, so we've come.
Reverend Tucker, I want to thank you for being here and waiting for so long. And just to be clear, do you anticipate that the report would be available before our next meeting, assuming we meet in March around this time?
Yes.
And so at that meeting, just in terms of thinking about an agenda and time-wise, it would be a more extensive report at that time.
Oh, yes, it'll be quite extensive.
Okay.
Again, I think we are trying to be as thorough. Metro Legal has also been mentioned as a party. Our organization has had to retain outside counsel to get answers to questions that we're struggling to get answers to. Matthew Desmond wrote a book called Poverty by America, and as I just witnessed today, he has a very interesting quote in there. He says that complexity is the refuge of the powerful. It's a really interesting quote. Unless you have any questions, I'm done.
Thank you. And we look forward to getting that report and being able to review it too before the meeting so we can have questions for you. But thank you so much for being here.
I have a quick question. Sorry, Reverend Tucker.
Yeah, wait.
Will your outside counsel be here when you present that report?
Yes, they can be, but, excuse me, they're just outside counsel, and I would determine whether or not they would speak on MHRC's behalf or not. So I would probably be the primary spokesman for the report that MHRC puts out.
I was just asking, since you had outside counsel, like we've been referring to legal, that we might be able to ask them questions specifically for legal opinion.
Well, if you would like for me to bring our outside counsel when we come, I could arrange to do that.
I just think it might be wise to do that in case we have a legal issue or question that we need to raise, because we can't go to legal. We've been asking legal a lot of questions. That's the only reason I asked that.
Well, I don't know. I'm listening to you, Commissioner Watts, and I think that's a question.
Are you using them as legal counsel and investigative?
A little bit of both,
Okay,
yes.
then
Yes.
if that's the case, then no. Okay, I get it.
Yes. Well, just to be clear, this particular issue, and I think maybe Ms. Fox could address it better, there is a conflict with Metro in this issue, and for us to do our diligence of trying to advocate for the folk who feel that they have been wronged in this process. So that's the, but if you'd like for me to bring them, I'll bring them.
I just asked the question, so I heard you.
All right, all right.
Thank you, Reverend Tucker. I feel like I need some guidance from the commission in terms of timing. So just to, we have an update, what is outstanding from the committee, the CARE committee, and we have a cultural planning update. We've completed the chair's updates. Where are we? I would love some guidance in terms of suggestions.
We have a 2:30 cultural planning steering committee meeting here, so it would really help us if you could adjourn so we could reset for that.
Daniel, I think that was canceled.
Okay,
We just got something on Slack.
okay, great.
Apologies. Should we continue on the agenda, I guess? Yes? Okay, let's try and do that, but, and I'm aware that we have guests as well, but if we could work to smush our times while still saying what we need to say, that would be great. The next item on the agenda is the Committee on Anti-Racism and Equity update. Chair Perez chairs that committee. I am now serving on that committee as well. And in the meeting this past week, and actually the past couple of meetings, there was discussion of changes to the application for community members. There are community members as a part of this committee, and there were recommendations made to staff for the next iteration of the form, and there are hopes to have a few more CARE members by June. CARE is to be working with all committees to help weave in CARE and the Commission's commitments to anti-racism and equity into all committees. And CARE discussed picking a joint training date for all committees and commission members in May or June with alternate routes and Justin Lang. We provided this update in January as well. And I know that Justin Lang is here as well. And so we were going to have him speak. Daniel, you could introduce to provide context. I do want to note to a point that was made earlier in terms of thinking about budget issues and things like that. In terms of training, thinking about the resources that exist within the CARE committee already and within Metro. So I just want to note that in terms of thinking about training, given budget constraints and given all that's going on. So, Mr. Singh.
So just to, since there are so many new commissioners here, I just wanted to set a really quick context. So, when I was hired, I was brought in to do the anti-racist work, and I met with the commission and CARE on October 22nd, about 3 months when I was here with Mattia, the then chair, and Ellen, the vice chair, and Andrea Blackman, and they gave me a charge of anti-racism. And so we were trying to figure out how do we align the processes we have with, because there was a contract that was signed with Martin and Cultural Planning Group before I was hired, and so there were all these moving pieces. And so figuring out how do we create a space to talk about anti-racism in the cultural plan when that was not put out as one of the requests in the proposal. And so I had to bring in someone, and I worked with CARE to do this, and brought Justin in to help us think through how do we align all of the needs that we have, the asks we have from CARE. And as I mentioned before, we couldn't even compare the disparity study. There were tons of public comments, data from our grant history. All of that was prompting us to think of our work in a different way. And then the CARE charter and mission also, the vision and practices of CARE was to be accountable to stakeholders of color, all genders, and other marginalized groups by viewing questions, issues, and topics of discussion through an anti-racist lens, identify connections between systemic racism and other forms of marginalization, exclusion, and oppression, including those related to race, gender, sexuality, and ability, be able to name and define systemic racism and its roots, recognize existing injustice, and commit to its ongoing work. So that was CARE's vision and practices, and there were a lot of things that were happening, and you can see it as whether it's happening in grants or cultural planning or the discussions we're having now, but I think those are like the technical manifestations of the larger adaptive issue of us not having addressed systemic issues here. And so that's why I've been working with Justin. He's a nationally recognized consultant in the arts and anti-racist space, probably one of the few who works in that space. He worked for Grantmakers in the Arts and several other organizations nationally. So I just wanted to have him here. He's here to support the cultural planning process from that perspective and to support CARE's vision. So if you have any questions around that, since we've talked about consulting work, he's here and he's happy to answer any questions that the commission has.
I have a question, and that is, have all of your materials been approved by Metro Human Relations and the people that are over there? And what contact do you have with Metro, who apparently also have a charge to do exactly what you're doing?
Yeah, it was never in my charge that I would present my materials to Metro Human Relations.
I think that there was a question raised in the executive committee meeting. That's why I asked this question.
Yeah.
And we were told that you had a direct contact with Metro who would approve your materials, thank you, approve your materials and would oversee what you were doing. And that was the comment from the director last week at the executive committee meeting.
We didn't discuss this in the executive committee at all, to my recollection.
I think we have a transcript of what was said.
Yeah, that's not in my scope that I would give my materials to Metro Human Relations. I mean, I would be in dialogue with Daniel about this is what I'm going to present on, to the staff or to the to CARE when I came to CARE. But that's how I would do that.
Can I clarify? Are we talking about Metro Human Relations? Or are we talking about Andrea Blackman's office? So Andrea Blackman's office is actually DEI work in Metro, and she's part of finance, is that right? Like under that realm. So is that what you were speaking of, Commissioner McCoy?
That was the name that was used at the executive committee meeting. I didn't know her name, but there was a specific question by one of you when you were there last week, and I believe
I'd have to go back and look. I've had so many meetings
I know,
lately,
I
but
know.
I'm gonna,
I actually reviewed it, and I was wondering, because that was the person, Andrea, who he was supposed to be working with, and she was either oversight, it was said that he was working and collaborating with her.
So Andrea Blackman was invited to the staff planning retreat we had in April, and she could not participate during the WebEx session. She wasn't part of that. So next training is hoping to be set for June. And so in that process, we can share what we're going to be discussing in the training with Andrea.
This was all last year. This is something that has been a contract, or, I don't know, purchase order that has existed for over a year, where Justin has been the person designated for DEI training. And I listened to everything he had on his video, probably last spring. So to say that she couldn't make one meeting does not mean that you couldn't have asked her to come and personally meet with Justin. I think that we do have a DEI entity in Metro that can do what we need. And again, I don't see the reason for another consultant and spending money that could go to artists. Thank you.
thank you, Commissioner McCoy.
Commissioner Lefkowitz?
Yes.
I wanted to raise, just as a practical matter, I mean, I believe we're all committed to equity, anti-racism, yes, of course. But is it practical to do this training now when we have a pending MHRC complaint, we have a pending THRC complaint, we have a pending audit, we have a pending HR investigation? With all of those crossfires going on right now, I don't see how the commissioners and staff and all of us together, with all this tension, can participate meaningfully in this process.
Thank you, Commissioner Neflin.
I would like to make a motion.
Can I make a comment, please? I'm not going to speak on something. I also, I would like to say too, that in addition to anti-racism, the anti-racism work, that I do believe what we've heard from staff and what I've heard from staff is the need for restorative work, healing work, care for our staff. And that is part of, I mean, equity begins at home for me. And we have there's a lot of pain and restoration, I think, that needs to happen. We have a restorative initiatives within our department. And so I want to bring that, not to prioritize that one way or another. I mean, I think they go hand in hand, but we need restorative work amongst the staff and maybe the commission as well, in order to have healing and move forward.
Can I make a clarification? So I haven't been on contract all year to do training with the staff. The initial contract I had was to support the grants.
Did you have a contract?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
good.
Yeah. So the initial meeting was to work on the grants review process. That was completed. And the second grant contract was with cultural planning. And that was to support the cultural planning process. So, yeah. So just in case there was any motions around canceling that contract, it would be good to do it under CPG, the cultural planning group, because that's who my contract is with, actually, is to support the cultural planning process.
That's you. So to be clear, Mr. Lang, you're a subcontractor.
I'm a subcontractor here, yeah, just to correct Commissioner McCoy, about my scope of work.
Got it. Commissioner Wade, and then yes.
Relative to, excuse me, the great amount of work that was just mentioned, I want us to be hesitant in pushing or not considering the anti-racism training, because I would be very willing to understand and believe that undergirding all of these complaints, most of these complaints, is a need for anti-racism and equity training. And it is concerning to me as a woman of color that oftentimes when conversations of anti-racism and equity come up, it is, let's not do that right now because we have so much to do. And my belief is that if we really do the real anti-racism equity work, not just training, we then no longer continue to have all of these complaints and challenges piling on one another all at the same time. And so I'm going to, trust me, I don't want another meeting. I don't want another anything. And I'm going to encourage us all to just hunker down and do it. We were asked us 5 new people were asked when we interviewed with council, are you committed to equity, diversity, and inclusion? And that includes anti-racism work. And I guarantee, I haven't seen everybody's interview, but we all said yes. And so we don't have capacity or time, or otherwise we'll be sitting here again next year doing the exact same thing. And I am unwilling to do that. Thank you.
May I follow up? May we invite the individual from DEI, I forget her name now,
Andrea Blackman,
to come to our next meeting and help us maybe work through this?
I am the acting chair today, and I don't know, but I'm going to say, sure.
Thank you.
May I say something, please? Because I think we keep pushing this rock down the road. I agree with Commissioner Wade that we need to do some of this work, and that the restorative part is broader than just a training. The restorative part looks at the process I've been talking about all day. What do you do when? How is it done? How transparent is it? And can people see it? Because if not, we're going to be in another quagmire because we're not transparent with how we do things. That's how we get into this bailiwick all along. I'm also opposed to trying to piecemeal this and do this piece of it and this piece of it in a meeting, again, when I don't have enough knowledge. So I'll be I'll abstain again if there's another motion, because I think we've got to do this in real time and honesty. And sometimes the way I'm seeing this now, I don't know that we are doing it in the form and fashion that is true to anti-racist equity work or to restorative work. Because it is about how does this commission operate? Where is its problems? It really is, and I used to do this, is strategic planning for how we do things. Finding our threats, our opportunities, and all that other stuff. And equity and anti-racism is one of those issues, but it's not. It's other issues as well.
Yes.
One last comment. I'm sorry, who did I interrupt? Yeah, one last comment. Please. I'm committed, and I will, of course, I'll fully participate. My concern arises from the fact that there are real legal claims made against this commission. There are potential legal claims on the horizon against this commission. And so, yes, I will fully participate. Of course I will. But know that I am, because I'm a litigator, I mean, I'm not a corporate attorney, as some have said. I'm a litigator, and these are the kind of things that I'm sensitive to. So that's where that was coming from.
And let me just say, if it's done right, we don't have to worry about litigation. If it's done right, it will ameliorate all of that madness. And I've said this for 40 years, because this is the business I've been in for 40 years. So I say that in that context always.
Yes.
Sometimes we avoid it because of the legal issues, when the legal issues are not really what we're avoiding. It doesn't, every once in a while I found enough stuff throughout my career that because it might be a legal issue, may not be the right answer, because then we've avoided process and management and those things that will eliminate the bias and the other issues. Transparency is one of those.
If you're leading the meeting, I'm all in. Thank you.
Can I make one other clarification?
Yes,
I know
Mr.
we
Lay?
have time issues, yeah. But I also wanted to say, I think there is a difference in my mind between diversity, inclusion, and equity and anti-racism. And so I do think if that's the focus, I'm definitely not the person, because I think partly the issue, at least in my view around anti-racism, and this may be even where I would run into different views with staff, possibly, because this is what the ideas I was contracted to bring in and then share, is that material change is the fundamental piece, and then changing the underlying narrative that usually justifies the lack of material change. Usually in the arts, it's the argument of quality, and quality becomes a major question. And I would say, to the point that I thought, at least I heard in what the Reverend was maybe suggesting in terms of power residing in complexity, is that often in the way that I would frame things, when things are like adaptive changes, big structural, systemic, heart changes, people often shift to technical conversations. And this has been a very technical conversation about all the various technical things going on. But when he comes up and he says, 70% of your resources have gone to 10 organizations, I mean, wow, doesn't that deserve a half hour? Yes. And so I think that I'll even say, to the cultural planning where I'm under, that we've had to kind of like try to get some of an agreement really that I would just support in the meetings, because we had to kind of shift the contract a bit, because I would say that, and this is not Martin's fault or Daniel's or mine, but things came together at different times and they're not quite aligned. And I would say this issue of diversity, inclusion, and equity and anti-racism are not just a small, like between 3 and a 4 on a continuum. They're wholly different assumptions, right? I would say often DEI is actually to what I would call racist anti-racism. It's to perpetuate something. But that's just my view. And I'm contracted to bring my view, I bring it. And then if you decide to end it, we end it. That's how, the beauty of contracts. So I would say, even to save you money, honestly, I didn't share this with Daniel because I didn't see this moment coming. All I really, the one thing, the suggestion I made around the cultural planning, because we weren't going to offer different major frameworks, because that would put me and Martin at contra purposes, would just be to change who was in the room, because that was my thought then. And all you can do is change who's in the room for the cultural planning then, because at least from a more democratic perspective, maybe if there are more people of color in the room, they'll shift it, because I can't shift it with the dominant frame because we have different planning approaches. So I in many ways, the work I can do on cultural planning, I've done. I mean, I think I can be in a room to support people who are raising issues and give some credence, or maybe add some more framing and language, because I live in that world, and I've been in the arts a long time. And I think there are some specific ways that racism shows up in the arts that are not necessarily always covered in all the anti-racist trainings, because most people, the arts is like a black box to them. They have no idea what goes on inside of it, and they kind of think like it's an arts thing. But the arts, I would say, are the underpinning pillar of white supremacy. I mean, that's why our downtowns look the way they do. I won't go on a big rant about this, but I'll just say, to any motion that might have been coming, it would need to go through cultural planning. But I actually don't think it would be a bad one that much of the work I can do, I've done on cultural planning, because I think the organization's gonna have to agree about what its underpinning opinion is about anti-racism and diversity, inclusion, and equity. And I actually would say sometimes you do it right and you have even more war, because if you're shifting resources, which is what I would say is the underpinning situation, all it's gonna do is increase. Because that's what I think the underlying thing, people are fighting over resources at the crux of the matter, in my view. They're not fighting over how they feel about each other. And if you're doing restorative work and you're worried about how people feel about each other, I'm definitely also not your person. And that's not to say that work's not important, it's just not what I do. But I've enjoyed it, I haven't enjoyed it necessarily, but I've learned a lot.
That's very, yes. Danny?
So from the time I was hired, so I was given this charge of implementing anti-racism, and this has been a problem that 3 executive directors before me have battled with. And I've been asking for commission and care to come to alignment, and it has not happened, right? So as we mentioned in October 2022, we gave the commission then 3 months notice, and only 3 commissioners showed up, none of whom are on the commission now. And I was given my charge by them to carry out the anti-racist work, and none of the current commissioners have had the training. And so to me, the problems you're seeing throughout is based on that foundational misalignment between what the care committee is asking me, as I read out earlier, and what the rest of the commission is trying to do. And we need to, that is the first thing we need to align before we can resolve any of the other issues that are, like Justin said, are technical.
Thank you. I really would like to, I think I would like to, since we've been talking about cultural planning and we have a guest who's been waiting for a super long time, to transition to that. And then I don't know if there is a decision to make, but I can put that back on. But I would just like, the last thing on our agenda almost is the cultural planning update from Mr. Cohen. Hello, Martin Cohen. And cultural planning, and Daniel, would you like to introduce Martin?
Poor Martin has been dragged in and out of this project for over 3 years now. He started in 2021, and we paused it because there was a ED change, and there was an interim ED. Then I got here, and we started the work, and then CARE was asking me to align CARE's processes with the cultural planning, which was not fair to Martin, because that was not in his original contract. So we've been trying to move this forward. Martin is a well-known planner. He's also from the dance world in Washington, D.C. But I didn't sign the contract, so no conflict of interest there. It was signed by the previous ED. And so he brings a wealth of knowledge from his perspective. So with that, I'll hand it over to Martin.
Okay. Well, when you say, I've been waiting a long time, as Daniel said, about 3 years. So what's another hour? It's not a problem. Let me just, a couple introductory remarks and really build a little bit on what Justin's mentioned, is that, we've been looking for a ways to align the work we're doing, the approach, if you will, call it the technical approach of cultural planning that we were originally contracted to do, and has been put on hold and started a couple times and stopped, and we're kind of at that place again in some ways. And so what I want to share with you today is how we're working to move this forward and provide some basis of what is cultural planning actually about. To give you some sense, because honestly, in 3 years, this is the first time I've been at the commission. So I met with a couple of commissioners early on. None of those commissioners are obviously on the commission any longer. So I'll try to be brief. I have 10 minutes. I'm going to try and get through that. So we have a few slides for you. And the question is, what is a cultural plan? It's an awkward term. What does it really mean? It's not strategic plan. It's this comment of a cultural plan, and it's a language problem. When we talk about arts, when we talk about culture, when we talk about cultural plan, we know that we have a language problem. How do we deal with a lot of the issues, frankly, that you've been talking about in very complex kinds of ways and difficult and technical ways has been addressed? In any case, the cultural planning process is intended to, in some ways, to answer these 3 questions, right? Assessing the state of the arts and culture in the region. What are we working from? What do we understand? What is the, if you will, what's the baseline? Where are we coming from? That's a very complex question to answer at this point, and has become more complex with what's, with the past year and a half, 2 years, and well, certainly much longer than that, but with the intended time of this process. The planning process is intended to identify these opportunities and addresses inequities. So, where we've been working to align the work is to say, cultural planning group says we're not anti-racism experts. We are experts at doing cultural planning that brings in and deals with inequities. So how do we deal with those different frameworks and approaches? And we've been wrestling with that, and at times it's been very collegial and very collaborative. At other times it's been difficult to get through those conversations, but that's where we've been trying to get to. But we know that that's a core premise of this process, and we're looking at ways to do that. Ultimately, what we're looking to do is develop a clear vision with goals and strategies to achieve that vision. And when we talk about goals and strategies and vision, the difference of what's called a community cultural plan and a strategic planning process is that a community cultural plan is about going out to the residents of the community, if you will, the taxpayers, right? It comes from this question of what is the role of the municipality in supporting the conditions, the environment, and the infrastructure for a cultural, creative life in a community. It's not about how do we just give money to artists. It's about what's the role of the municipality, in a sense, creating this quality of life service for its residents through the support of municipal dollars. And the instrument of doing that is how we support organizations, it's how we support artists. And that's where there's, trying to come to that vision is really thinking about that. Why don't we go to the next slide? I've just got a couple slides here anyways. This was a timeline. I'm actually not going to spend time there because it's almost irrelevant at the moment. Next slide, please. So we use a process that we call the mixed methodology. It's a research methodology that looks at qualitative insight, quantitative insight, complementary information. None of this, any of you who are researchers or do planning, right? These are tools that you would see in any kind of municipal department planning, right? You go out to the public. That's really the qualitative, it's very important to us to design a set of engagement that starts and goes through a series of concentric circles, begins with those who are closely aligned and deeply involved in the process, the commission, the staff, going out to the artists, those who have received grants, those who have not received grants, those who have been shut out of the process. We're very much, and if there's an alignment, it's very much understanding all of those people are with if you will, stakeholders in the process and communities that we speak to. But we go beyond that. Our charge as cultural planners in thinking about the role of municipality is to find ways as much as reasonable to go out, find those touch points to get the public to bring their input. What is their vision for what it means maybe for their neighborhood? Right? They may not know anything about Metro Arts, but what they might want to know is, how do I find a way for my kids to have creative expression? How do I find ways for my family to participate? We can't, we don't go downtown, we don't go to the red velvet seat kind of situation, but is there anything in my neighborhood where we can be participants? So that all is used, that information is used for helping feed into developing that vision. That's what this process is designed to do. So we talk about this vision for engagement. Thank you for bringing that slide up. It's a form of campaign for arts and culture in the sense of it's an advocacy to go out. What do you care about? What do you want to see? What is it we're trying to build here for our community? And how does that manifest itself through the work of the commission, right? Engagement is about not just generating input, but galvanizing the ideas that come out of the region in that vision. It's a very intensive process. Through this, we like to build relationships. We like to make sure we go into areas of the community that aren't normally asked that question. Many years ago in cultural planning, when I got into it, it was like any kind of municipal planning. They would put up a sign saying, come at 7:30 p.m. to a meeting at City Hall, and we want to hear what you have to say. And that is old-fashioned. It doesn't work. It has nothing to do with where people are or who people are or how they live their lives. And so, if you look at this graph here that's put up and, informing it, we look through our process to bring all of the points of view around this, I guess it's not a grid. What would we call this? A circle. What's that? A web. Yeah, it's a web. Thank you. It's a better word. But all of this feeds into the learning process that we undertake through the cultural planning process. And that's what we've set out to do. And we have been stalled on this, quite frankly, because Metro Arts has been going through a lot of transitions. And it's more transitions. As pointed out, there's more barriers right now for being able to move forward. So the question is do we move this process forward? And I think there's a way to do that, but that has to be a decision, that there is clarity and consensus on. And if we move into engagement, right, we want to make sure that we create this inclusive approach, that we go beyond what we already know. I will say this, an awful lot of work has been done in the past year and a half, in particular, since Daniel came, the grants editing process, I was able to come and observe some of that. Justin's led a fair amount of that as well. The work that he's been doing, all of that is incredible information that we wouldn't have known and have been very difficult to get, but is already giving us a basis from where we're going into the next phase, right? And ultimately, it's about creating and disseminating compelling communications and engagement that spur the community to take part. It's a big challenge, it's a lot of work. Our approach, meeting people where they are, undertaking qualitative research. We'd like to talk to people one-on-one many times, as much as the budgets and the time allow, because they'll be much more honest with you than if you put a half a dozen people in a room and they're competing with each other, right? And there are circumstances where those one-on-one interviews will be helpful. But we also do that as an advocacy effort, within, in this case, within Metro. One of the anecdotes I shared with Daniel early on is, we often say, getting a cultural plan adopted by city council is, 4 out of 7 votes or 5 out of 9. And here it's 22 out of 40. I mean, it's a whole different advocacy, a challenge that we very rarely see. It's a kind of complexity. We can't interview one-on-one 40 different council members. So we have to find ways to work around that, but we want to make sure that we're listening deeply in the community. We're doing quantitative work, and ultimately coming to a set of findings and recommendations that are deeply informed. It's not about what we think, meeting the arts consultants, cultural planning group, and our team. It's about what we hear. Our work is to synthesize, hold the mirror up, bring it back, say, did we get it right? What is missing? Let's use this to develop strategies, and how do we come to a consensus to move it forward? It's a very intensive process, and it takes a lot of work. There's a steering committee, which was canceled for today, so we could go over. It's about 26, 27 people. If you could just go back one slide, I just want to touch on this, Chuck. That this committee was brought together. We've augmented it recently. We're bringing new voices into it. We see them as, and I will say this, some of these people agreed to be on this committee 2.5 years ago, came to one meeting, have been put on hold. We brought new voices in. We're trying to get restarted here. But we see them as ambassadors of the plan. We see them as collective voices. We see them as thought partners in helping us to be connected to their communities, whatever those communities, or parts of those communities that may not otherwise have a voice in this planning process. So this is if you will, this is a quick overview of the cultural planning process. And we'll see where the timing goes from here. The intention is to begin to moving it forward. Next steps that were designed was, bringing new voices in for the steering committee, building the communications and the brand, which we've been working on. We do have 2 other subcontractors. One's in the room, Carolyn German, who's with Theatercraft here, and who's working with organizing the engagements and working with the whole engagement process. Moncherie Jones with Mojo Marketing, some of you may be familiar, who's working with us on marketing and branding. She's a Nashville PR and marketing firm. And as Justin mentioned, he's been brought under as a subcontract under CPG as well. But our next step is looking at those communications. We've actually recently been able to establish a website that'll be NashvilleCreates.com. Is that correct, Darren?
Nashville-Creates, yes.
Yes, Nashville-Creates.com. No content there yet. The website's not been designed, but we're working on content. And then organizing the next steps in the engagement, starting in those inner circles, if you want to think about it as concentric. Those who are in the creative community, arts, culture, creative practitioners, we're starting with them. Then we want to go out to work with the elected officials, and then begin more broadly in residents in the broader community. That's a kind of a normal learning process that we would engage in. So that's a sense of who we are. As you're talking about some of those contracts, we're kind of in that mix. We're probably deeply in that mix. I can, if I can provide any clarification there, happy to do that. and otherwise, I'm sitting here and I'm smiling, and I'm listening another hour, as I've been listening for 2.5 years. So glad to have the conversation, and I'm happy to have a discussion with you, answer any questions. We've been going a long time, but let me know how I can be helpful, please.
Mr. Cohen, I just want to thank you for that and for that's such a helpful overview of the cultural plan and for being so patient and waiting. And thank you so much. Are there questions? If you had to say, Mr. Cohen, like what percentage, like if it's like those thermometers about how far are you to completion in terms of the production of this plan, where would you say the thermometer is?
Well, I would quickly say we're probably generally look at 5 phases. And the first phase is pretty organizational, and we've kind of been languishing in that first phase of the 5, off and on. And I would say we're ultimately still there. We haven't been able to move to the second phase yet.
This may be more of a finance and budget question, because this started several years ago. I would assume that we've needed to expand your financial compensation as the years have gone by.
There has been some expansion, but part of that is also the original contract that was engaged with Caroline, who was the prior executive director of Metro Arts, was a strategic plan, which is a very internal process versus an external process. And when Daniel came in, he started talking to us, which is mostly what we do nationally is focus in the external, in the cultural plan. So it's, costs have changed. So, I think the original budget had us visiting town 4 or 5 times, and we've already been here, 5 or 6. We haven't even really started. Things like that. And those are just direct costs. That's part of it. We've brought in, obviously Justin is under the contract, that's expanded it, but also what it takes to do a full community cultural plan is more expansive than just a strategic plan. So, and happy to share sort of what all those pieces are. It's, and part of, I will say, bringing Justin in was part of that. And some of the other, what I would call pre-work that was about setting up, helping Metro Arts get through its transition process was passed through our contract. So some of that is passed through, including some of the work with Dana Parsons. So that's all should all be public record. Some of her work. Originally, she was brought in. One of her jobs was to be the liaison with the cultural planning process, which is where. So there was no other staff person to do that. So in her role, and so that contract was brought in underneath as a subcontract. She has, for my understanding is, that work has been completed, although the invoice for the last part of her work for the part of last year has not been paid yet, although it's been invoiced. So that just being transparent, that's all part of what's happening within the finance project. So that made our contract more complex, and it makes it look like what we're doing is much larger than the reality of what our core contract for the cultural planning piece is.
Thank you. That answered a lot of my questions.
Yes.
I think that it would help when we can see detail in budgets like I'd requested in my email, because we could see CPG broken out here, consultant X broken out here. But thank you, Martin. Yeah. Thank you for being here.
Sure. I just want to make, we work nationally, right? This is what we do. Early on, I didn't speak up, but I think it's worth noting, and I understand there's accounting questions around how the individuals are paid. That is very common in almost every municipality we work in. When individual artists are funded, they are not given grants, they are given contracts for services. Because cities won't allow grants to individuals. There's every state, every municipality is different in this, but it's when you're talking in public realm, it's most often it is contracts for services, which is, I suspect, where accounting was putting them under the professional services line. So if that gives it some perspective, that's a very common national issue. It's not just a Metro issue.
Thank you for that.
Can I ask a question on that point?
Sure.
while we've got a national expert, on those contracts for services, so we are looking to give more money that way in contracts for services to artists, small grants. How do other cities deal with the oversight to make sure that we're spending our money wisely and we're not just writing checks to people that aspire to do art?
Well, so we've begun looking at the program here, and you know, it is an expansion of the program, but it's an expansion to provide additional money for those artists to do projects. So the criteria, as I understand it, I don't have, I've looked at the rubric. I don't have it all in my mind at this point. That's not necessarily our role, but I will say this, that it's looking at how do we make a more accessible, the process and the rubric is looking, from my understanding, more at how do we recognize how artists are doing their work and how the resources for the project funding can best support them in doing that. So there's both process, how do we make it more transparent, more accessible, if you will, easier to apply. We're talking about $20,000 project grants, so I think on the other side of the reporting, it's reasonable to be thinking about how much of a burden and expectation of what is it we expect in our set of criteria in getting back and understanding that the project was completed or not completed. I like to, in our work, refer as any of work that's done, particularly on a project basis, as risk capital. So how do you define success? It's risk capital. And some projects are going to have impact, others are exploratory, others are may have 5,000 people involved. Some may have 20 because it happens in a classroom, or it may happen in a community center. It may happen in a Boys and Girls Club. So I guess my advice would, or my perspective, if more than my advice, is to look at it less from, how do we know dollars are being spent, to saying, are we being successful in deploying risk capital in providing opportunities for artists to engage broadly across our community, which would be another lens. And again, that may not align with everything that's designed right now.
There's a lot to wrap our minds around here, but my understanding earlier of the conversation about the $700,000 that was moved into another account is that it was $700,000 of money that was meant for artists and in an award program, not a grant program, an award program, but it was moved into an account that was meant to pay contracts for people who were on staff with Metro Arts Commission, right? So
not in staff, just general contracts.
Just general contracts. Well, is it possible to make another line item specifically for contracts that are for grants, or
Contracts
for
for
awards
services.
that go to artists, and to keep that money separate from other monies?
So we have asked accounting for that in the past, and they've always said to use what we have as existing account code, but we have also started new conversations with accounting to say we would like this to be broken out as a sub-item so that we can figure out how we can separate our contracts like cultural planning from contracts that are going to individual artists. So we are in conversation with accounting to get that done. And can I, Justin, can I loop you in? Because you've done this work with grant makers in the arts. Can you help us with anything you want to add there?
Yeah, I guess I'll say, I think this issue of criteria and standards, typically what I think you would see, because I worked as a grant maker for 11 years, I was on the Pennsylvania State Arts Council for another decade, advised grant makers. And what I'd say is the issue typically is the artist is going to generate the standard for their own work. They're going to say, our work is based upon this, this, and this. We will achieve this. And then when they report, they would assess themselves against their work. And part of the issue is across the field is there's no money for evaluation in any broad way. So auditing in a typical kind of like pick 9 is probably more disciplined than you'd see most private funders for sure, which would just take a report to a program officer. They'd say, looks good. And that would be the end of it, right? But I would say what I've seen here is a panel reviewed grants. They weren't all supported, right? So the panel made a decision against some criteria that they had. A more anti-racist criteria process would expand the way in which you would think about what quality looks like, right? And it would expand who's deciding and reviewing, which I think that's what's starting to happen. Then when the report comes back in, you would ask the artist to, like I said, here was your piece, did it happen? And that's pretty much all you'd be able to do. You'd be relying on very close readers, and still then I'd say it's quite subjective. And I would say most agencies do not have the capacity to manage, if they're doing like, how many grants are you doing a year?
So last year we did 105 in Thrive that were
And-
not grants, they were contracts, and about 75 general operating grants.
Right, and I would say you'd have to be equitable about judging both operating support and the Thrive. Could be very easily, I would say, to let operating support come in almost unchecked and then to go super hard on projects. And where are most BIPOC people? They're in projects. So I would just say one thing you should be mindful of is, how have you been assessing operating support for 3 decades, right? Because my guess is, if you watch the grants, you're gonna see it would look as though it's going up in one ongoing, almost like inflation. And that would mean that there's been no drop-off. Not 1 year in 30 years. If you see that, you go, oh, I see, there's an assumption of funding here. And I would say the equitable thing to do then would figure out how you're gonna do something similar in project or make drastic changes to operating. So that's why I think this whole project fund actually is its own problem. But I'm not here on grant making, but that is the work I actually do a lot of.
Thank you, that's very helpful.
Yeah.
And if I can add, just, embellish and add to, it's not really embellish, it's adding to what Justin, I also spent many years as a grant maker. I was with Pew Charitable Trust in Philadelphia. We're on opposite sides of the state of Pennsylvania. I'm in the Philadelphia area and Justin's in Pittsburgh. And we were at different foundations. And so, the expectations and the kind of criteria also has to be very intentional in how you design those programs. What is it we're trying to accomplish with these? And so if you will, the reporting and how do we know if we're successful has to be designed in a way that is in line with what your expectations of the program are, but also taking into consideration, what are the tools, what are the resources that are available for that, if you will, reporting to come back to you. And I think that's a lot of what, Justin's talking about. The artists, I suspect, a lot of what we hear nationally is true here, which is, how do we work outside of the structure of trying to create a new nonprofit organization? We just want to do our work. Artists, artist collectives, and the system, and that's philanthropic, and this is sort of a gross generalization. When I was at Pew, we spent many years saying, how do we just get past this model? And when I went, to the board of Pew and said, great, we need to be able to make individual artists. Oh, no, we have to do it to a 501c3 because that's our mandate. Well, it's like you can't do both, right? How do we support creatives? How do we support the work that they do? And tell them they need not go into a 501c3 structure, but not give them the support to do that. So that's just another lens on thinking about how you might want to be thinking about it.
That's very helpful. Thank you. I want to close the loop before we finish with the executive director report in terms of the training and say that I think we do need that and that we need to discuss at the next meeting the shape of that. And we talked about Andrea, maybe we could invite her. And but I want to say that I would like to happen. Now we'll move. I'm getting loopy. I don't know about you. Thank you. The executive director's report. This is item J.
Yeah,
J on the agenda.
Talked through most of it. I again just want to reiterate that a lot of the discussions we're having is not aligning the mandates I'm getting from CARE with the rest of the commission, and so that's something we're working through. The document that CARE has crafted as their charter is with legal now for review to see if it aligns with our bylaws. So that will be the beginning of the conversation we need to have about what are we going to do with anti-racism work and how does it influence everything we do, so we don't keep having these conversations over and over again. And I also want to reiterate that the training has been something I've been asking from day one, a joint training of CARE, all committees, including public art and the full commission, and so it's a priority for us. And the last thing is that I know that we're hearing a lot of voices from the community. But I think we also received 201 Thrive applications this year and 109 general operating grants. We're doing the tech review, so we don't know how they break out. But I think that speaks to the success of the work we're doing, and it will only get better from here. And we also moved the grant cycles earlier, not just because of no reason. We're trying to align it with what happens at the state cycles. The state is doing the grants around the same period so that we can inform our budget processes. We had to just submit our budget first request of our budget to our budget office this week. So we need to move it up earlier, and so that's why we moved it up to where it was. Other than that, I'm happy to answer any of the questions you have.
Thank you, Daniel. Are there any other questions or comments? Our final agenda item for the day is old new business. I feel that we've already had a lot of old new business, but I'm wondering if anyone has any old new business. Vivian?
Hopefully I will be the only one. I just wanted to clarify, do we need a special called commission meeting for March, or are we wanting a grants meeting for March? I just need to know.
I think we're going to do both.
Both?
That's what was my understanding too.
Okay.
Both. And we
So-
don't need to vote on that. We can just say it, right?
So the doodles will specifically say the first one, Metro Arts Commission Special Called Meeting, and then the next one will say Metro Arts Grants Special Called Meeting. So just so you all know.
Thank you for that.
Thank you all.
That's perfect. Any other new
Let
old
me just
business?
ask a
Yes.
question. I assume any commissioner can attend one or both of those. And I guess my next question is with respect to the oversight process itself, which is a larger process that looks at a lot of stuff, or should look at a lot of stuff, let me just say that. Where is that going, and is that charge coming from the chair, or is that process something that will be put into place shortly as well? All of these seem to be things that are contingent upon the other, and that we need to have ongoing pieces looked at simultaneously.
Thank you for that question. In regards to the Oversight Committee, I know that, can you speak, do you know? Blair?
Yes, now that the chair has appointed the Oversight Commission, it's my understanding, and Heather has been assigned as the chair of that, it's my understanding she's going to set up a public meeting for that committee as well. As soon as possible, because I know everybody wants to get the money out the door to the artists.
I'm going to set up a meeting really fast for that. So yes, take action. And then, did you have something, the first question? Did I answer both of your questions? Great.
Secretary, could I'll just say in front of engagement, because you've been at every committee meeting since you've come on, and I just want to say, to answer that question, we encourage everybody to come to everything.
Oh, thank you.
Just if you can.
That was this, yes. All committee meetings are open to all commissioners if you're able to come. And I have gone, and it's very interesting, and I've learned. Any other old new business? Well, I'd like to thank you all for being here today. Thank you for your patience with me. This was very last minute for me. And I'm wishing Chair Perez that she feels better. But thank you so much, really, all of you, for your patience. Do I have a motion? Oh,
Before we do an emotion, just thank you for herding us around and keeping us on task and on target, because that is a difficult task. So thank you a lot.
Thank you, Commissioner Watt. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Seconded.
All in favor? Opposed? Abstain? Farewell. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.